Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We are super excited to be with you this week. And being the first week of March, we're going to kick off a 5-week series of Mule Deer March.
That's right.
Which we are beyond stoked about. Each week, we're going to have a special guest in the studio to talk about all things mule deer, probably from shed hunting all the way to hunting the elusive giants that are in areas of the state that you might not guess. And this week, we've got Brock Weilep in the studio with us. And we're going to get into his story. We're going to hear the story of a couple cool bucks. If you guys are watching online, your eyes are probably popping out of your head. We have some Washington monarchs here hanging in the studio.
Plus a little average one.
To show you, to give some scale reference, one of Smong's bucks. But obviously, before we get going, we want to thank our sponsors and the wonderful companies that make this podcast possible by supporting us. First off is Onyx Hunt. Brock, do you use Onyx Hunt?
I do.
Yeah, it's an app for killers for sure, and it's absolutely necessary in this day and age. Shows you all the good things: private boundaries, public boundaries, burns, timber cuts, forest roads, closed roads, even private lands that might have possible public access like lease options or fish and game contracts, things like that. But a great platform.
Next one we want to thank is Vortex Optics. We love our Vortex Optics because no matter which optics you have, if something happens to them, they are backed up by a lifetime VIP warranty. So you just set it in to Vortex Optics, reach out to customer service, and 100% they're going to take care of you. So if you have an optics, even from 20 years ago, and something happens, they'll take care of you. If they can't repair it, they're going to send you a brand new one. If they don't have that model anymore, they're going to replace it with a newer model. That's why we love them, because Vortex Optics is all about people first, and that's what we work with.
Third, we want to thank Argali Outdoors. And Argali's really just nailed it as far as hunter catered gear, from tents to knives to trekking poles. What they've kind of done is just taken one thing like a tent and nailed it down, and they don't give you a whole bunch of options. They've got their different sizes, and they've got one style, and that style works. Yep. And we love their gear. It's durable, it's lightweight, and it's extremely high quality. And we've been using Argali in the field for a couple years now and have just all good things to say about it.
Lastly, we want to thank Tacticam, in particular Reveal. These are our cell cams of choice because the picture image quality is by far the best that we've used. And the best thing about them is because they're cellular, you set them up in the woods. When an animal walks by, the camera takes a photo and it sends it straight to your phone, so you don't have to go back and disturb that area and potentially push out some big bucks like what's next to me right here out, because these big bucks are smart, and the bigger these bucks get, the more sensitive they become to pressure. So the less you can step foot in an area, the better your odds of actually turning him up during hunting season. But with that said, before we actually jump into the bread and butter of this beautiful podcast, we're going to go to Trivia Duel.
I know you listen to the podcast, Brock, but we'll each ask a question. Sometimes they're multiple choice, sometimes they're not, and we just basically take a stab in the dark and see if we can learn something. Smong, you want to go first?
I will go first. Even though we love mule deer, and this podcast is about mule deer, I'm not going to ask you guys about mule deer. This is a multiple choice, and this is a very simple question. What is considered the toughest natural fiber? Here are your 4 options. A, spider silk. B, hemp. C, linen. Or D, cotton. Whichever one who wants to go first.
Brock, you want to take a stab?
I'm going to say spider silk.
Final answer?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Nate?
I'm going to say hemp.
Hemp. Okay. Final answer.
Final answer.
The strongest natural fiber belongs to spider silk.
Gosh.
It comes in at 1,300 megapascals or 1.3 gigapascals. Megapascals and gigapascals, that's simply just the unit of measurement that they use to measure tensile strength. Hemp is actually very strong too. It's around 550 MPa or megapascals. Linen is about 250 to 550, so very strong. And then cotton's obviously very, very weak at 20 to 41 megapascals. So spider silk being at 1,300 megapascals, that is 5 times stronger than steel.
Wow.
To put that into perspective. Spider silk. Can you imagine that? A little piece of silk from a spider.
If that's like some of the inspiration of Spider-Man there.
I don't know, but Spider-Man's swinging around from buildings, so maybe
very
there's something.
interesting.
But I'll finish it out with a fast fact later, but that's not the end of Spider Silk.
Okay, I like it. I also have a multiple choice for you guys, and a very simple one. What is America's oldest firearm manufacturer? Is it Remington, Winchester, Colt, or Smith & Wesson?
Oh, that's a good one. Brock, do you have a guess?
I'm stuck between two of them, but I think it's either Colt or Winchester. I'm going to go Winchester.
Winchester, okay.
I'm leaning towards Winchester too because they put their date on their boxes of ammo, and I know that's the only number that is way past what Remington is putting in my mind. I'm not too familiar with Smith & Wesson, but I highly doubt that they came before Winchester. Colt, I just don't know much about Colt, so I'm just going to go Winchester.
Okay, you guys are both locking in on Winchester.
Uh-huh.
Of those four, actually, Winchester is the newest company.
No way.
And the oldest firearm manufacturer is Remington.
Really?
Remington started off in 1816. And then second, you have Colt in 1836, Smith & Wesson in 1852, and Winchester last in 1866. So all extremely old firearm manufacturers from the 1800s. However, Remington comes in and tops the chart back in 1816. And Mr. Remington, I don't know how to pronounce his first name, so I'm not going to try, basically forged the first Remington barrel. He went out and he shot a European barrel, and he thought to himself, I feel like I can make something better than this. And he went and hand forged the first Remington barrel in his dad's forge. And it was just of a quality that was obviously superior and really good. And he went on to develop that and start the company of Remington.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
That
Did
is
not see that one
incredible.
coming.
Yeah, I know. When I thought of the question, I was like, it's got to be, like, the first thing that came into my mind was like, it's got to be Winchester. So like even my Google was like, is Winchester the oldest firearm company? But no, it sure isn't.
Well, it's not. Wow, that's good to know. I had no idea that Remington was that old.
Well, guys, we have Brock in the studio today, and you're present on some social media. You do some Instagram, right? But you're not super into it.
Yeah, I'm on and off. I mean, sometimes I'll have my posts up, sometimes I won't. I delete it and put it back up again. I kind of on and off.
Yeah, and you'll notice that this is kind of a theme, will be a theme through March, mostly, of a lot of these kind of mule deer killers that we know in this state. And they kind of just keep their head down, they do their thing. But Brock here is from our area of the state, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
22. I'm a husband and soon to be a father, so I'm really excited about that. And I'm a Christian, and I love being outside the woods anytime I can be there, and love mule deer, and I love the country that they bring me to. So,
And you graduated school today, right? The day we're recording this podcast, that is.
yeah, I just finished school, just finished my degree. So,
So you've been chasing mule deer your whole life while also being a student, all through high school and college pretty much, right?
I hunted every year in high school, and then I really started focusing up pretty much as soon as I hit college, and then I've been trying to balance work, school, and my mule deer passion.
Man, so at 22 years old, you're pretty decorated. You've got a lot of things under your belt already. I mean, you've killed 2 bucks bigger than what Nate and I have killed. At 22, I mean, you're married, you have a kid on the way, you just graduated college. What'd you graduate with?
Electrical maintenance and automation degree.
Right on. See, so that's, at 22 years old, that's impressive.
Yeah.
That's very decorated.
And one of the things we're going to talk about today is kind of finding these mule deer and watching them, and especially in this part of the state. And I think a lot of people's go-to is that, well, I can't do that. I don't have the time. I've got a family. I've got kids. You know, I live 2 hours away from mule deer country or 3 hours away from mule deer country. And so hopefully we'll maybe debunk a little bit of that today or give some validation to kind of just it being your passion. But first of all, for you guys watching, give us a little lowdown on each of these bucks, and then if you want to tell the story of one of them, we would love to hear.
Well, before we go, I want to take this guy off because he's kind of annoying me in a way. So if you're watching on YouTube, we have 3 bucks in the studio right now. This guy right here on the bottom below Brock's shoulder-mounted buck is what I would deem like what most people are probably shooting in Washington State. This is like a 120, 3x4 buck. And this is probably what a lot of people would be extremely happy shooting year in and year out. Like, you don't walk out and see a buck like this every time you hunt in Washington. And I would argue that he's actually slightly above average than what most people are shooting in Washington. And so he's a nice buck. But then we put him here for reference so that when he's next to what Brock is killing, it puts into perspective of what these guys, meaning Brock's bucks, like the caliber and class that they are in. So I don't want to put this guy here anymore because we want to take this guy off. But this is like a very average Washington deer. And now we want to give the highlight to what Brock has killed recently, right? What year did you kill this shoulder-mounted buck?
This was 24.
So 2 years ago. 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then what about that Euro mount next to you?
This is my 21 buck.
So everything's within the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And we live in an era where most people would argue that these big bucks just don't get big anymore because they're getting shot young or the genetics just aren't the same. But clearly we have living proof that there are still some pretty big bucks walking around. So with that said, Brock, you've got 2 choices here. We're leaving it up to you. Let's start with the story. Tell us a story about either one of these bucks you choose and kind of the background of how you got them.
All right. I'll probably tell the story. I think it's a pretty cool story of the 190 one, the shoulder mount.
So this is a 190?
Yeah, 190 even.
190 even, gross score.
Yeah, so we had 3 guys score him. I had a buddy get 189 7/8, another buddy got 189 7/8, and I got 190 on the dot. So I'm rounding up.
Okay. And what's our point count here?
I think it's a 10 by 8. I think it's a 10 on this side and 8 on that side.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have Chris put an overlay on this because this buck, he has so many little details that you probably can't see from the far camera. But the first thing that caught my attention when I walked into the studio was he has burrs like almost throughout his main beam length. Because a lot of times you have these burrs just kind of close to the base of the antlers. But this guy, he's just like burrs and trash everywhere. So, again, this is a general season buck, public land buck. So anybody could have shot this buck.
Yes. National Forest buck.
Let's hear the story.
All right. Well, this story kind of starts in 2023. It's my first summer, like, completely out of high school, and I just really wanted to go out and really try to find a buck. I was kind of getting frustrated, you know, your normal Washington hunts, you got a lot of people around you, and you're just kind of dealing with the Orange Army. And so I got on Onyx, and I was just looking for anywhere where I didn't think anyone else would hunt that looked like it would be growing some mule deer. Landed on a spot that I kind of had a personal conviction about. I thought it looked like it would be terrible to hunt, but it looked like to me like it would grow some big deer. And this was back when putting salt and minerals in the soil was legal. So, you know, a few years ago. So I set out, put some salt and minerals on my back, and started hiking. I got up to the ridge, and then I was kind of hiking around, and I think I was about 3.5 miles in, and then I think like 2,500 feet-ish of elevation gain. So not super far, but, you know, enough to get off the beaten path. And it was thick. It was steep. It was rocky. It was nasty.
And just to reemphasize, we're talking about Northeast Washington here, which for those of you that don't know, this doesn't really scream mule deer country. A lot of people, when they think mule deer country, they're thinking sagebrush or like super high country, like alpine type stuff where it's relatively open.
Yeah.
Here in the Northeast Washington region, it's thick. When we say thick, I mean it's thick. And so we know exactly where you were. So you were probably just busting brush, basically.
There's actually, it's really rocky and there's a lot of deadfall. So there's really not a whole lot of brush. But you can't get anywhere without avoiding deadfall. It's super, it needs to burn is what it needs to, it needs it bad. So yeah, I kind of just set out, and then I got up to the top of this ridge, and I found a pond. And I found a main trail that came off that pond and went off the north side. And I really like north sides for big bucks. I think that they use them to get away from people.
What month was this?
This was June. So then I set out that camera and just kind of let it sit. And I had quite a few younger bucks on it. A lot of, like, you know, nice 150-inch 4-points-ish, you know, just
a lot of younger bucks, 150-inch 4-points. Okay, go on.
And I never set out to hunt it, but I kind of kept an eye on it just to kind of see, because to me it was really promising because I saw no sign of humans up in this area. And I didn't think anyone else was going up where this camera was, and I've yet to see anyone up there yet or signs of humans. Never had anyone on my camera still to this day. So yeah, just kind of let it sit all summer, let it soak. Had some bucks come in. I think probably, 10, 15 bucks came in throughout the summer, and the pond ends up drying up around like July or so. And my buddy drew like a Kentucky elk tag that year, so I ended up hunting all the way over Kentucky. So I didn't even hunt mule deer this year. I think I did for like maybe 2 days or something, just my schedules didn't really work out. And
when you were hunting here, you were hunting rifle season.
yes, yep.
Okay.
Rifle season, and I didn't even hunt that area. I hunted with my family. I was kind of raised hunting mule deer with hunt camp with my grandpa and my dad, and so I hunted with them that year, and I ended up actually messing up on a really nice buck. I think he was pushing 160, just a real nice 4-point. I would have loved to see what he grown into. We never got him back on camera after that, but I had him at 40 yards and couldn't make it happen.
Ouch.
That hurts.
I had quite a few of those stories when I was younger, but it taught me a lot. And it actually ended up being one of the reasons I ended up killing this deer. I fully 100% believe is having those mess up to teach me that, because it wasn't the first one I'd messed up that I didn't end up killing. So yeah, so we kind of flash forward to 2024. It's May 18th.
So you never had this buck in 2023 on camera at all? Okay.
Did not. If I did, he was like that one you had. He
It wasn't big.
No, not at all. But I mean, I know big bucks can blow up sometimes, but nothing to me screamed that it was that. I didn't have anything with trash or anything. So, but yeah, so it's May 18th, 2024. Go up there. The camera had actually been on a tree and it had a deadfall, so it added to the deadfall and it fell down. So I wanted to go up there, get that camera set up, and kind of see what those bucks grew into.
So the tree that it was set up on fell over?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Both of them. I had 2 cameras on that salt, and both of them fell over.
Oh, jeez.
This, I'm telling you, I'll have to show you some pictures after the podcast. It is ridiculous trying to even walk into this. Just like a trail, and just both sides you can't even walk. So that's why I think the deer were using it so much. But then we must have had a bad windstorm up there or something, because I had so many deadfall across that trail that I had the camera on. They kind of even stopped using it. They made a new trail around.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So then I actually ended up finding that out when I went up on May 18th to do that. So this is also when salt was still legal. So I packed up some more salt on that May 18th and headed back home. Found a big moose shed on the way down, and just kind of enjoyed my day up there. And
so
then,
what was the reasoning behind setting those cams up again, knowing that you didn't really have a prospect? What made you say, I'm going to leave the cameras here?
Actually, I probably should add that. That's a great question. I had daylight pictures of these bucks in rifle season.
Oh, okay.
Of those younger bucks, they were on the camera in rifle season.
So it was just enough for you to be like, this is a prospect.
Yeah.
And just to kind of paint the landscape for me a little bit more, is this an area that if you were to go in during rifle season, is this basically a still hunt, or is this area that you are thinking, okay, this is kind of a north face that they're working out into some glassable faces that are either south or a clear cut or something like that?
When I set this up, I had no intention of ever glassing this spot. I've been on this mountain for 3 years now, and I have yet to find a spot where on the mountain you can see a spot that you can shoot over 50 yards. Maybe 70 yards if you're like really cutting in between trees and really not even really getting to know what you're shooting at. But you can maybe shoot that.
It's really thick and visibility is just not good.
Yeah, just the way the ridges lay, it's super steep, and the way it rolls,
you just don't have a good vantage.
No. Yeah, there's one vantage I've considered maybe trying to glass from, but you're looking into little 30-yard circle openings. So it's really short, and there's not one good vantage to look into all of it. You'd have to pick a vantage to look into a couple or into it, but it's
a lot of effort for very little glassing opportunity.
Yes, but that's kind of what you end up dealing with, and that's kind of a lot what I learned this year is that you have to find the right pockets, and sometimes you'll go out and you'll see no deer, and you just have to be okay with that.
Did you know that idea right there that you just brought up, that you have to find these pockets so that you can actually locate them, meaning your cameras clearly had a pocket of bucks. Is that part of the reason why you're like, let me just let this camera soak?
That's exactly, yeah, because that's the whole northeast Washington mule deer. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people traveling to come hunt here for a reason. A lot of the time people are going out, they're not seeing deer, and if they are, they're seeing, a doe or two while they're running away, if they're hunting some of the thicker stuff. So it's pretty frustrating hunting. Yeah. But looking at it from my perspective now, if I have another big buck up there, I will be glassing for him, along with cameras.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, back to your story. We cut you off.
Oh, no, you're totally good.
Both your cameras were on deadfall.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we set the cameras back up. 2 days later, May 20th, he comes in. All you can see is the eye guards, and you can and he's out to about right where his G2s start. So you can just see he's about out to his ears, and he's got a G2 start, and he's got decent mass. So I'm like, okay, that's going to be a good buck. He was by far the biggest buck I had on camera.
Was he alone?
He was.
He was, okay.
Yep. I had pictures of him with other deer in them, but he was running them off.
Oh, he did not like friends.
No, I have lots of pictures of him, and there's like a picture of his butt running away because there was like a buck in the background.
Uh-huh.
And then there'd be like a doe that'd sneak in, and then 2 minutes later he'd come back and that doe would be gone. He didn't
What
really.
a bully, man. He
Yeah.
just wanted all that salt to himself.
Yeah, and that's actually another theme that you'll find with these big bucks. They're bullies. They're grumpy old men, a lot of them, and they don't want anyone around them.
Do you think that that's because nutrients are so rare to find in the country that they live in that when they find like a salt lake like that, like they're so desperate to like use all of it to themselves that they just kind of become territorial around it?
I think they're like that with everything.
Really?
I actually have a video of the biggest buck body-wise that I glassed up this year, and there's another. I mean, I think he's in the 160s, but I've had other people that say he's 170s, and that buck steps off the trail when that buck walks through.
Really?
Yes, and I can show you the video if you guys want to see it after.
yeah.
But these bucks, and I mean, I got some friends in Wyoming that talk about it, and I know Story Ratcliffe. I don't know if anyone knows what that is, but big buck killer in Wyoming. The buck he killed this year was over 200. They named him Grumpy because these bucks, they're these grumpy old men, and what they do is they want to be alone and they want what they want. I mean,
Okay, that's good to know.
yeah, that's what you're doing. Is you're
So
hunting.
basically, the moral of that was if you have a big buck sharing salt with other little bucks, he's not the big buck. There's a big solitary buck somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean that's not always the case, and that's with mule deer. You can't always make a hard rule. With them.
Yeah.
I've learned that anytime I think, okay, this is a solid rule, next time I go out, it proves me wrong. But but yeah, I think that's it's a very similar thing between a lot of stories out here with big bucks.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so May 20th,
You got a picture of him.
2 days after.
Yes.
And this is a cell cam that he came in on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, well, this is a good start. You know, it's a good start to the season. I had some other good bucks that ended up being, like 160s, but at that time you couldn't really tell a difference. You know, they're going to be good bucks. And then I think within a week after I got that picture, a bear came and knocked over my camera again.
Do you not use bear boxes?
I didn't for that one because I didn't think anyone would be up there.
Oh,
And bear boxes are a little bit spendy and I'm on a budget. So
expensive. Yep.
yeah, I have a few, but I've kind of used them more in like spots where I think that there might be a chance that someone would find it, just because I don't want my camera stolen. And I've actually, before that year, I did not have that bad of luck with bears. Since then, they've made up for lost time, and they've really been after it. And I've been investing in some more bear boxes. But up to that point,
Black bears or grizzlies?
all black bears in these areas.
Okay.
But
good.
The grizzlies are growing.
Yeah. I'm just asking because they're around.
Yep.
Yep.
The camera still worked, but it was pointed way off the salt. It was onto like a side trail that they didn't use as much. So I would kind of get like a picture of a butt, or I'd get a picture of like a little piece of an antler or a head or something. But I was kind of busy, and I went to a couple other spots scouting the next few weekends just because I'd already just been up there. I didn't want to go all the way back in. So then it came to like late June, and I was like, okay, I need to go back up to this spot. And I was planning on going up that weekend. I think it was like Wednesday or Thursday. And my pictures come in for the day, and you can just see his frame growing out, and you can kind of see parts of it. And his frame was only grown out to where, you see that point that comes off the main beam, that one's kind of balled up there?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's all he had grown out to. So it looked like he was getting a split main beam. Because just the way he was growing his velvet. And he had a couple stickers, but not everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it just looked like he was going to have 2 split main beams and a couple junk.
It was enough to get you like very
Really
excited.
amped.
Yeah, it was enough to where I was like, oh, I was already going up there this weekend, but now I'm really going up there this weekend. But yeah, so then went up there, fixed the camera, and I walked around a little bit more, kind of tried to see if I could find some big tracks or where I thought he might have been at. I headed back down and didn't get him on camera again for a whole nother month. So you got to think, we're May 20th, June 27th. So he's in there one time in 5 weeks, right? So then we fast forward to July 27th. I hadn't had him on camera again. Had some other good ones on camera in some other areas. So I was kind of looking at maybe hunting some other ones. They were a little bit more consistent, and I was glassing them up, kind of figuring out, okay, this is a pretty huntable deer. And I kind of wondered if that buck was living on another mountain. So I actually went on the mountain north of it and the mountain south of it, set up cameras and salts, and just kind of see, maybe he was coming off a different ridge or something. Because I was like, man, a month in between, maybe he's not there a whole lot. And so July 27th hits, and he comes in again.
To the original one.
To the original one, yep.
Okay.
I think at this time I had around 5 cameras out for him ish, and he comes in the original one, and he's what he is pretty much.
Just in velvet.
Just in velvet, yeah. His tines might be a touch shorter, but you can tell exactly what he's going to be, and I'm losing my mind. I was actually out fishing with one of my friends, and we had really bad service, and only like 2 of the pictures came in, and they were like blurry ones in the night when he's first walking in, and we're like, oh boy. We end up getting back to service, and we're like, all right, well, I know what deer I'm hunting this year now. And it was kind of like a no-brainer, like, all right, well, it's time to figure it out. And I feel like I'm always still learning. You know, the day you decide you stop learning is the day you stop getting better, right? So I reached out to some guys that I thought were better mule deer hunters than I, and I just kind of asked them what they thought. And one guy told me to not hunt that deer because it's an unhuntable deer and to go find a different one. And another guy told me that I need to go glass for it. If he's been there from May to July, then he's right there, and you just need to go find him. So I decided to go try to go find him. And between me and then my cousin, he hunts with me, we had 11 cameras out for this deer.
Holy. All cell cams?
No.
Mix.
We had 3 cell cams, 8 normals.
Okay.
He never came into a single one of the other ones.
Okay.
He never came in again from July 27th to September 1st now. So and this year I had the multi-season tag. So I have archery, muzzleloader, and rifle. He still hasn't came in. So I'm kind of on, we had some other really good bucks on camera. Like I'm talking probably, 170-inch deer. I mean, it's kind of tough to not want to go hunt those. So I actually went with some of my buddies opening weekend, actually just opening day. And we went and hunted a couple other good bucks and didn't really get in on them. And then they had to go, I think one of them had baseball or something. So we decided to just head out.
Is this opening day of archery?
Yes, of archery.
Okay.
Yep. So then second day of archery, I go up. And one of the ponds I had planned on getting water out of had dried up. So I'm like 3 miles back. And
Are you packed into like backcountry hunt? Okay.
Yep. And my backcountry gear is like Walmart tents and stuff. So, I mean.
Dude, we love to hear that, man.
Oh, yeah. It's,
another common theme
Yeah.
among
you make what you have
consistent
work.
hunters. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like it's what I've kind of done with my gear. I'll keep this short, but like I've kind of just tried to do the best of what I want, and just like kind of just slowly build up my gear. So like I've got a custom rifle, I've got good KUIU gear, but for a long time I just had Walmart.
You were
Cabela's
walking around
gear.
with an $8,000 rifle and Walmart clothes.
Yeah, that's because to me it's like, okay, what's the most level of importance? I've kind of worked my way up. Like I used to have like cheap glass, and I just recently got my first pair of Swarovski binoculars.
Nice,
and I'm loving them. But yeah, so that's kind of just my general way of thinking about gear. But so I go up and walk all around, kind of still hunt with a bow, which is its own whole level of difficulty, in my opinion. I think that's about as hard as a hunt you can get. Went around, never even saw a buck. I saw 2 bucks the last time I went up in August to scout and set up cameras. I saw the second biggest buck on the mountain, and then like a 1.5-year-old 4-point that I think's like. I actually am still watching this deer. I think he's going to end up being a big buck, but we'll see. Yeah, so then go up, and I get within like 25, 30 yards of these does, and they keep looking up the hillside, and I'm just kind of wondering, maybe there's another buck up there bedded because they don't know I'm there yet, and I'm 25, 30 yards from them, and then they end up eventually figuring out I'm there because I kind of slowly tried to move around to see if I could see what they were looking at, and I never end up seeing what they were looking at. I heard it, but just kind of like ideas of like how thick this deadfall is. I'm 30 yards from these deer and I can't see anything around them. I can just kind of see their heads and where they're bedded because I've already walked it before. I know where to look and kind of things like that. But it's just such difficult country. And I just wish I could show everyone a picture of like what I'm walking through so they could understand. It's not like what most people picture. It's not like brushy. It's like really soft dirt, so you can actually be somewhat quiet, but it's also rocky, and there's just deadfalls just crisscrossed all over, along with like lodgepole and tamaracks. There's a lot of lodgepole tamaracks there. Anyways, end up never figuring out that deer, and then the third biggest buck on this mountain was probably like a 5-year-old 4-point with eye guards, 150, 155 inches, somewhere in there. I kind of start walking back toward them, gonna start heading back, and I find a pretty fresh dead deer. And there's no head on it. And I kind of just circled around it and ended up finding it was a dead buck from the day before the last time I had this buck on camera was July 28th. But the last time he came in was July 27th. So this deer still had velvet on his antlers, and he was 200 yards from the camera. And at this time, you gotta think this is opening week in archery. I still haven't had this deer on camera since this buck was alive, and now he's dead. So I'm wondering, did this deer kind of move out of the country? Like, I mean, I've got how many cameras out for him? I still haven't had him on camera.
Wait, so you found a dead buck without a head, and then you found the head somewhere
Yes,
else?
I circled around it for like 100, and then 100 yards down the ridge, I found the head.
What happened to
Yeah,
it?
what was the cause?
No idea.
Like, was it torn up? Like a
Like, was it
animal
eaten?
got it, or
Yeah, it was, but like there wasn't much for like broken bones or anything. Like like a lot of times you find like a wolf kill, there'll be like when I found cat kills or what I think is a cat kill, the nose will be broken in, and his wasn't. I really don't know if he just got sick or what. I really don't know, because the last time I actually looked back at the pictures of him after I found the head, and I couldn't find like anything wrong with him. I don't know. He didn't look sick.
Like he looked pretty healthy.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had cats and wolves on that
and like
area.
obviously not a poaching case because the head was also still there down the hill.
I mean, it could just be one of those rare situations where he just had a heart attack. I know
And
it
his
sounds
head
weird.
popped off.
It's well, what the thing is, like, I'm assuming that happened after he died.
Yeah.
Like he probably died to a natural cause, and then once he's dead, like that's when critters started coming, and, like eating him and started dragging him away. Because for a deer to just be dead one day after you just got footage of him being completely healthy, it's usually it died because of cat got him or something, a natural cause that is very sporadic, like a heart attack.
Yeah, something goofy. I still don't know. And
That's crazy.
but yeah, so in my mind, I'm like, well, maybe this deer's not here. Maybe that's why I'm not getting on cameras. Maybe that's why I'm not seeing him, because I've been up. I think I've been on that mountain like 6 or 7 times at that time, just in that year, like since May, just trying to find this deer and try to figure out what was going on. And it's also like September, so I'm also kind of wondering, I should start finding some rubs here and there when they're getting ready to start losing their velvet, and I hadn't found any rubs. And so then I kind of just end up, packing up shop. I had to go back down to school, and then one of my wife's friends was getting married, so we ended up heading down for a wedding. And after the wedding, I looked at my cell camera app to see what was coming in, and there he was.
During archery season?
Yeah, September 15th.
Middle?
Daylight.
Middle. Okay.
Yeah, like,
Incredible.
like 7:30 in the morning or something like that, like half hour after daylight, whatever the
And
daylight
he's
time is.
still alone.
Perfect time, yeah.
All alone. Well,
All alone.
all alone.
Bullying other deer.
Yes, he was all alone, but there was no bucks with him. Some does came in like half hour after him, and he wasn't having it. And then they stuck around until he left, and then they got the salt. But I mean, yeah, he's got them dark antlers. It was the day after a rain, which is another thing that salt's illegal now. But that was one thing I saw a lot, is those big bucks day after rain or during the rain, they were in the salt.
Huh.
Like almost like not just like one buck. We'd have like clockwork within half hour of each other. We'd have a rainstorm hit, and bucks 20 miles from each other within like 10, 15 minutes sometimes into the salt. And they'd stay, and then, yeah, it was really interesting to me.
Do you think it's a scent thing, or do you think it's like a accessibility to the minerals because of the mud or the rain kicking stuff up?
I think it's the accessibility of the minerals. I'm not a scientist or biologist. I don't know. But that's kind of what I lean towards. I don't know. I don't wonder if it makes it like easier to lick up, because then they're not licking rocks, they're licking the water that's in there. Because a lot of time they dig those big holes, so there's actually like a little puddle in the bottom. So I wonder if they're just getting like salt water, so it's easier for them to access.
I mean, logically, it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so September 15th, he shows up all dark.
So
Yeah.
this is the first time he's a hard-horned,
Yep.
and this is like, exactly what he is.
Yes.
Because he's hard-horned. This is
Yes.
exactly like what you got on video or camera.
Yep.
All right.
That's kind of like my rejuvenation. Like I was kind of starting to get, down in the dirt. Like, maybe I screwed it up on this buck and I have no idea where he's at. And maybe he got killed by whatever killed that other deer, and maybe he ran out. But he's obviously still here.
When you were hunting, like actually going in with your bow, were you actually going to your bait site, or did you just kind of hunt around your bait site?
My bait site was mostly just, it's like on a trail that goes from what that pond was in like the late or early summer. It's usually dried up by late summer. But it's kind of like a trail that goes off the south side and goes off to the north side. There's like one of the main trails that goes south to north. And there's also a converging trail that goes east-west. So that was I do that a lot with my cameras. I try to find where like the deer are already naturally going. And that's where I used to put my salts, and that's where I still put my cameras.
And is this one of those classic situations where you're primarily looking at a saddle? Like they're crossing over from south to north through a saddle, or is it just
Yes.
a high point? It's a saddle.
It's a high point, and there's not a saddle on the south side, but there is on the north side.
Okay.
And it's just a slight one, just a very
Just enough.
But that's this whole ridge. It does like a lot of these little tiny saddles to where you can't see anywhere. There's just a little like 50-yard saddle, and then you can only see around across that saddle if it's not too thick, and then you can only see the next saddle and the next saddle, and then
Gotcha.
But yeah, and then it's also benchy. So there's also a north side bench that this trail goes down to. And there's a few little pockets on that bench where the deer bed sometimes. It seems like it's mostly the does that bed back there, because I never actually saw a buck bedded back there. And actually, when I would see where the bucks were going, they weren't going back there either, which kind of surprised me, because other spots I found, north side benches are great spots to find buck beds. But I think it has a lot to do with the way the wind goes there, and I don't think the wind is the most optimal there. And I think bucks like that are the king of the mountain get the optimal spots if they want them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I go up again, don't see anything, and don't get up again till rifle season starts, and me and my cousin backpack in.
Now, are you going in like before rifle season and hunting all through rifle season, or are you like weekend, or what's your commitment to it?
So this is weekend warrior in it. I gotta take one day off this whole season between archery. No, I took 3 days off because I got 2 days off in archery to make like a long weekend with Labor Day, I think is what I did. And then I didn't take any time off in muzzleloader, and I got 1 day off in rifle season. The 1 day off I took was the day I ended up killing him. But yeah, so this is full-time school, 20 to 30 hours a week working as well. So I'm getting up, working at 5 a.m., working till 3:30, and then kind of just doing that with school in between that time. And then after work on Friday, I started heading up and
Head up for the Saturday, Sunday.
Yep.
Back to work on Monday.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, me and my cousin backpacked in, got up. I hunted kind of by my camera. I hunted off that north side, and he went up the south side. And probably like an hour after daylight, he jumped a bedded buck, and he just said it was a good buck. And he didn't know how big it was. We still don't know for sure what buck it was to this day. I have reason to believe that it's the second biggest buck on this mountain, just because I had a camera out for him. I actually found just a good-sized track, a mature buck track, and I just threw a camera on it just to see if he ever came back. And the same buck hit it 3 times. He was the only buck to hit this camera. This one never came on it. But that buck was on it like 15 minutes before Chris came through.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm almost sure it's that one, but he never really got to see it because he jumped it. He heard it jumped out of his bed and he freezes. And then, they kind of do that like 1-2 hop sometimes out of their bed.
Yep.
And that's what it did. And it was right along like a really thick wall of timber. There's like a ridge line there. And like on top of the ridge line, there's these little like 30-yard openings that I kind of told you about. So he was kind of on the bottom edge of that, and that buck was on the top edge of that. And then he just saw horns hopping away. And I kind of circled around the north side, and he stayed on the south side and kind of slowly started pursuing it. And we ended up losing the track in the deadfall. Didn't know. At the time, we didn't know what buck it was. We thought it might have been the big one. And then went and checked the camera and figured out it probably wasn't. But yeah, we both kind of got pretty frustrated with hunting the deadfall. That was the only deer we saw that day.
So you're spending your day just creeping through deadfall, still hunting, pretty much?
It's either that or sit on the same trail all day.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't really have a lot of options from what you're telling us. You don't have glassing opportunities, so you either got to literally jump them, like get on them, or you wait for them. There's really no play.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to try and spot and stock, I mean, there is a spot where you can see a couple of those openings, but you're banking on them being in like 100-yard radius.
It's got to be like a perfect situation.
Yeah, and I'm sure if I would have sat on that ridge, I'm sure I would have saw some bucks, but I think you're looking for a needle in a haystack. You're looking for one deer in this whole mountain, or range of mountains. I wasn't even sure. So we're looking at this mid-October now. We're 5 months into this, and this deer's came in once in May, once in June, once in July, and once in September. So we're 4 times I know this deer's been here in 5 months. So at the time, I really wasn't really sure if that was even really where his homeland was. Maybe he was off somewhere else. I didn't really know.
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, I think he was, and I just think where my cameras were, we're just missing him. But you never know, right? Yeah, so we end up heading down after that. We kind of licked our wounds and
So the first trip up with the rifle, unsuccessful.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And this was opening weekend.
Yep.
Okay.
And actually, we were getting ready to head down, and there was actually some guys that my cousin saw that never made it up to the ridge that we were hunting, but they kind of like walked along the side of it, but down towards the lower end of it. at like 11:30. So I don't know if they like left the trailhead at daylight or what, but they were coming up there. So then he was a little worried that maybe that we'd have to deal with them, and we didn't want anyone to like know that we were hunting 190-inch Washington deer. Like that's
Yeah.
yeah. Because I mean, being like from a small town, a lot of people know my pickup, and I was a little bit worried about that. You know, I mean, not that
It
like
is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
If it happens, it happens. But
For
like if
sure.
I can avoid it, it's not like I didn't have any other deer that I knew about too. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, I know there's 160, 170-inch deer here. Let's just go hunt that one for a day or two, and then we'll figure it out next weekend. And we go and we hunt another area. I didn't see a single deer that morning, but my cousin saw like I think 4 bucks or something like that. And
Just no shooters?
yeah, I mean, me and him, knowing what we know, it's really hard to want to shoot a younger buck.
So he saw legal bucks. He just passed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I think the biggest one he saw, it sounded like it was like 140s.
Okay. Good
But-
to know.
But knowing that it's a young buck and there's bigger bucks on the
Yeah.
mountain.
Yeah, that's kind of you can't kill a giant if
Yeah.
then that's
That's an easier said than done thing, especially in this part of Washington.
oh yeah, I've struggled with the same thing lots of times. I've passed 150 some inch deer before before I ended up killing this one, I passed a 155-inch deer like 15 seconds before I killed it.
Oh.
Not knowing that one was there.
Yes. Or I knew that there was another buck, but I didn't know that it was that big.
And just a quick sidestep for you guys listening on audio, we're looking at a typical 4x4 with eye guards and a little cheater sticker on one side that taped out at
170.
170. Okay, so that's the other Washington buck here in the studio.
Yeah.
So back to this 190. You took a break. You hunted a different buck for a couple days or a
Yep.
day.
Yeah, and then didn't really work out. And then my cousin, his work is kind of unique, so he kind of got to take the whole hunting season off that he wanted. So it's really cool. He's a contractor, so he kind of gets to do what he wants to a certain extent. So he hunted without me. I had to go back to school and work. He hunted Monday through Friday, and then I was at school.
Did he see anything during that time?
I think he saw some bucks, just nothing special.
Just passing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Next weekend comes around. We don't go up to that for the big buck first. We went off for another nice one that I knew about. And then actually we went to one new spot, which is not something I'd do again, but it ended up working out really good because there was a really good vantage spot that I knew of that looked into some spots I knew were good buck areas from previous years, but I hadn't scouted that year.
Is this a completely different area than where this buck is?
Yeah, like 20, 25 miles away.
Okay. New
Totally
area.
Oh, yeah. Whole
New
different area.
So literally this buck wasn't even on your mind on that hunt when you guys said we're going to go hunt this area.
Yeah.
Okay.
Different bucks were, but not that one exactly.
Not this one.
I found that good main vantage, and then we both ended up spotting a pretty good buck. It was like a mile away, but enough to where we're like, okay, that's a buck we might want to go look at again. He had another buck with him, but he was quite a bit bigger than that other buck. And so that was on a Sunday. I had to go back to work and school for a Monday, and then the last day of season was Tuesday. I had the Tuesday off from school. There was like a faculty work day, and then I took the day off. So then he goes in Monday while I'm at school and shoots that buck that we saw the day before. It did the exact same thing pretty much. He shot it, I think maybe 100 yards from where we glassed it the day before. It did walk almost the same trail. So that was really cool. It's like a super old buck. This buck was big bodied. It was with another decent buck, and it was, I think it taped out like 158, something like that.
That's a big buck.
That's a big buck.
Yeah, big bases. It kind of got spindly towards the top, not wide, but good main beams.
Sounds
and-
like he was regressing.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think so. He didn't have eye guards. He just had like multiple stickers at the bases and then kickers up towards the top. So they had
Just
like some
funky.
inlines. Oh yeah, super unique, cool buck. But yeah, so I mean, another mature buck that we ended up finding, making it happen on. That when we could see him, made it happen. But when you can't see him, it's whatever. So then he's tagged out. So then Tuesday rolls around. It's the last day of the season, and I wanted to go for the big one. I was like, go big or go home, right? So had another buddy who I scouted with. Actually, he's the one that I went out with opening weekend of archery. And he knew about this buck. He was there the day that I got it on camera in July when I was fishing. So Monday night, headed out, stay with my parents, and then it's like, I don't know, 2-hour drive from their house to where the trailhead is for this buck. So we left really early in the morning, hiked all the way in, and got to where he was at, a little bit after daylight. A little bit later than I wanted to be, because I wanted to be like on his area and daylight, but touch later, split up, probably 15, 20 minutes after daylight. I started walking along the south ridge, and we had a wind that was going straight down. There wasn't like a whole lot of wind, so just the thermals was kind of pushing down. And I kind of just planned my hunt based off of that, and I was just going to go as slow as I could.
Have you done this route before this season?
Yes.
Okay.
This would be...
So you're kind of retracing your steps.
Yep. And one thing I forgot to add, the last time on opening day when I was there, when my uncle jumped up that buck, I found a good-sized track in a bed with a fresh rub. And that was like probably 200 yards, 150 yards from my camera, but on the same ridge top. So kind of started the best way to get up this ridge, because there's a lot of spots where you cannot actually get up this ridge. You can't just walk up anywhere. You have to pick your trail. Yeah, so I kind of walked up to where my camera was pretty close, and then I started circling over along the ridge top and just kind of started walking, kind of paying attention to the wind, checking the wind every few minutes and making sure that it was keep pushing down. We didn't have any wind pushing the way I was wanting to walk. And I think I'd made about 150 yards from where I split up with my buddy Waylon, and it was getting to where, like I said, there's a lot of these little 30-yard openings where you can kind of see a little bit. It's like kind of grassy and some rocks. And I'm walking along this deer trail, and I'm going through what I would call like a Christmas tree patch, like a bunch of trees 6 to 12 feet tall, just young lodgepole saplings. I get to where like I'm kind of on the edge of this, and keep in mind, I'm going super slow. I mean, this is, I think it like 45 minutes had passed. I moved like 150, 200 yards. So I'm going.
You're
like,
a turtle.
Oh, yeah. I'm taking one step, kind of taking a breather, kind of looking around as much as I can, and then taking another step. And I'm kind of pacing it to where, like, sometimes I'm taking a step every couple minutes, and sometimes it's like, I can't see anything anyways. I need to get over this log. I'm going to take, like, 3 steps because it's not going to matter because I'm in so much brush.
And when you're doing this, are you just scanning with your eyes, or are you actually throwing up the glass from time to time?
I'm not throwing up glass. I do in some instances. This one, the max I could see was, like, 30 yards. A lot of times it's like 20. So, yeah, I mean, there was no point. So I get to where I'm about to open up, and I'm about to get to this opening to where I can see it. And this is where that bed was and the rub was. I'm like 60 yards from where the bed and the rub was. And I'm like, okay, one more step, I'm in this opening. So I really need to scan before I step into it. I looked down to my right, and I was like, oh, that's a buck. Just by the body. I couldn't see the head or anything, but it's at 30 yards, and I could just see a big, mature deer body. And
what's the deer doing?
He's standing broadside, looking my direction.
Standing broadside with his head turned, looking at you.
Yes.
Okay.
But I pull my scope up, and the reason I couldn't see the head is because it was fully covered by the trees I'm behind.
Oh, okay.
So I can just see pretty much from his neck down. And I'm like, okay, well, I know it's a decent-sized buck. I wasn't going to shoot anything unless it was him, though. Mm-hmm. So I look, and I actually, people are going to think I'm crazy, but I actually took my scope down and zoomed it in, and this is all happening really quickly, but then I really looked inside in between the branches and stuff. I could see there's a really deep, he's got deep G2, G3 forks right there, mm-hmm. and that's all I could see. I couldn't see any of the kickers or anything. But
and you couldn't see his face, his eyes?
No.
So he couldn't see you?
No. And I think that's one of the only reasons I killed him, is because I don't think this deer ever saw me. I don't think he ever smelled me. I guarantee he probably heard me. I mean, I'm being as slow as quiet as I can, but I don't think I'm sounding like a person is what I would think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But so then I see that he's got super unique antlers, and I'd probably looked at him more than I'd like to say. He was my screensaver. So then I knew it was him, and I ended up shooting. As soon as I figured out that it was him, I just put my crosshairs right behind the shoulder.
And you could see the whole body.
Yeah, it was just neck down. I could see just fine because he was right on the edge of that opening.
Uh-huh.
And I shoot, he drops. But the way the hills roll and the way it's so thick, he drops and I can't see him anymore.
Yep.
So I'm like, I got to decide, do I just let him kind of do his thing, or do I try to see if I can get another follow-up shot?
And this was, you said 30 yards?
32 yards. Yeah.
32, okay.
Yeah. I decided to kind of see if he made it over the ridge and if he was running, or if he actually just piled up and dropped. And my gun jams when I'm like, because I can't see him anymore. I ended up having to get to 15 yards to be able to get another follow-up shot in him. And I didn't need to, looking back on it, but I don't know, I had a kind of bad experience with the big whitetail I shot. It kind of like haltered, or like kind of like fell a little bit as it went over a hill. And I thought it went down because I never saw it come out. But the way it used the hills, it actually got into private property. I never saw it again. And it would be my biggest whitetail by a long ways. I mean, we're talking 160s whitetail. It was a stud.
Beast.
Yeah. So after that, I've always been like, if I get a shot, I don't care if it's done. I'm just going to make it happen.
100%.
So I ended up shooting him through the neck. He lifted his head up and looked at me, and I just ended it. And,
Where'd your first shot hit?
Double lunged.
Oh, he just wasn't down and out right
Oh,
away.
he was done.
He was done, but you were.
You weren't playing around.
No, I was not
put him
playing
down
around.
in sight. Yeah.
He wasn't dying fast enough to your liking.
Yeah, it just. I've got a
I
heart for these
get it.
things, so at the same time, it's
Yeah.
like I want to end it as
I
fast
get
as I
it.
can for him.
I'm the same exact way.
So yeah, and then he goes down, and I mean, I told Waylon that morning, I was like, if I shoot, either a predator's attacking me or I killed that buck. You just know that. Like, I'm not shooting anything else. And I shoot, and I just fall to my knees, and I'm thanking God. I was like, wow, that was insane how that just happened.
Did Waylon hear you shoot?
Oh yeah, he's only. I mean, gotta remember, I was only.
Like an hour ish.
Yeah,
And he's kind of doing the same thing, slow sneaking.
yeah, he's slow sneaking,
not
but he
that
went the
far
opposite
away.
way of me. I
Yeah.
think he was only like 300-400 yards from me, so
Oh.
he knew exactly who shot because he
Okay.
knew where I was going too. So yeah, so then I pray, thank God, and I'm just shaking, just can't believe it just happened. And I check my phone, he's like texting me 3 or 4 times, like, no way, dude, no way, no way. And I call him, and he's like, no way, don't walk up to it, wait for me, I want a video. He's losing our minds. We're just like a couple of kids, and I wait for him to get over there, and I end up calling my cousin Chris, let him know, like, hey, I killed the buck, just letting you know, I'll give you a call, I'll send you some pictures, but like, he's dead, I actually got him. Yeah, and then he takes a video of me walking up to it, and it's actually on my Instagram story highlights. You can hear the little giddy voices that we have walking up to it. But I think if anyone wants to kind of have an idea of what this area looked like, I mean, feel free to get on my Instagram story highlights. You can kind of see like what the actual country that he was living in looks like. I mean, you can see all the deadfall, and you can kind of see the little opening I'm talking about in the video. But that was kind of it, and the rest is history, right?
A 5-month chase ends like that. That's
And-
crazy.
I mean, I'm sure one of the things that you thought about is I proved that one guy wrong. That told me it was not a killable deer. But to all accounts, it sounds darn near like an unkillable deer. I mean, without it happening the way it did, it's not something that most people will do. It's not especially people that might just have the weekend or just a couple days to hunt in a season. I would say most people in Northeast Washington are not going to spend their time taking one step, waiting a couple minutes, taking another step on an animal that you had less than half a dozen photos of on a single camera.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole summer.
And one of the craziest parts about this was
Yeah.
that camera I put up in hunting season on opening day was 50 yards from where he ended up dying.
Really?
I had multiple cameras within 150 yards of where he died that never got him on camera. I had 11.
Crazy.
I literally, so what I did is one of the guys that told me, his name's Dione Muchastagi, but he was the one of the guys that helped me, and he just told me to put a 1 mile circle around where I knew this deer was on camera. I had 11 cameras in that 1 mile circle, and I mean, I think they were in pretty good spots. I mean, maybe other people would laugh at them or whatever, but I mean,
Just never got a single photo of them.
yeah, I mean, it wasn't like they weren't picking up any deer. I mean, I was getting pictures of deer on them.
Just
often,
not him.
But that's not him.
So with that, do you think that he was so set on a particular pattern that your cameras just missed him? Because it sounds like he was in the area the whole time. And for you to have 11 cameras and practically none of them catching him, it means he must have had a specific route, at least I would think, where it just so happened to dodge every single camera, and he stuck to it so well that they never picked it up. Because if you think about it, if he would have just randomly turned off his route, he would have eventually walked into a camera at least once.
Yeah, I think that he was coming off his route when he hit my salt, is what I think.
So when you shot him, was he just standing on a trail or was he on a bed?
He was staying on trail.
Oh, so he was probably walking too.
Well, actually, I didn't notice this until after I shot him, but I looked over and 10 yards from him was a tree that he had just demolished.
Oh, so he was raking the tree.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of, part of it, you can kind of see it's a little dried up in his antlers, but when I shot him, that was all fresh. He had just done it. There was poop still steaming hot right next.
Oh,
I know it
wow.
was for sure him, but yeah, it was just a little sapling. I've always been told, big mule deer only rub on big trees, and his was just, I mean, we're talking like a 4 foot tall sapling, and he took the top out of it. He broke the top and rubbed it all up and down.
So you were shooting him where he was doing that rub, or he was off of it?
5 yards off of it.
So he literally just got off.
That.
Yeah. So I wonder part of it
He was
maybe
so
just
distracted that like he just didn't hear you coming through or something.
yeah. I mean, it could have been.
So you're thinking, I feel like this goes, like when people think about, especially in this area of state, when people think about hunting a patternable deer, they think about whitetail. They think about like whitetail, they come, they got their pattern, they hit their scrapes, they got their beds. Like in mule deer, you think big country, they roam around. Like they're not, like you hear time and time again, mule deer aren't patternable. But just the prior weekend, was it your cousin or your
Yeah.
had shot that deer that was doing a very similar movement that was a
Yes.
mature deer, and then this deer, you're thinking like your salt was close enough to what he did that he would come and check it out every so often, or are you thinking that you kind of just hit the nail on the head with putting salt in this deer's on his circle, on his loop?
I think that the pattern is a very loose term because I think that they have like areas, they have like their core areas where they're not going to be there all the time, but they're going to be there a lot of the time. And I think that the top of that ridge, the way it was kind of on the edge of really thick timber and then also some rock, there was kind of some good forbs and a little bit of brush that grew up on those edges there. And I think he was kind of feeding along those in the mornings. And that's kind of where it looked like I followed his I backtracked him a little bit after I killed him. And he was coming east to west along that ridge top, just right along that thick of the timber, in coming from where I would say was the best area of feed on the mountain.
So when you're talking about trails, when you look at the ground, is it like a distinct trail, or is it like a trail where it's kind of there, but if you don't look close enough, you just would never guess there was a trail?
Kind of both. This mountain's a little different, and I think that I would kind of like to have a little bit of disclaimer. I think the reason that these deer use the same trails more than I think other deer have compared to what I've watched, because it's so thick and it's literally almost unwalkable where they don't have trails. Like I said, the main trail that I had when I set up my camera, it doesn't even really get used anymore. There's so much deadfall across that trail now. They literally blazed a new trail that was not there when I set up the camera that is there now, and it's very well used. Like down to dirt already. Like you can see tracks in it super well.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they actually made a new bed right there too.
And one thing I've noticed you've kind of mentioning in Sideline, and I think, I mean, we're kind of telling, as you tell this story, we're talking so much about specifics of mule deer hunting that it's kind of getting broken down that way. But you've mentioned tracking quite a bit. You mentioned seeing a track in the bed the weekend before. You mentioned backtracking him. Is this something that kind of throughout the year when you're out there you feel like you're paying a lot of attention to? Is not just like game trails in general, but looking for big buck tracks?
Yes, 100%.
And is that something that's been somewhat reliable for you, like finding a big buck track, and like that is enough for you to put effort into that area? If you find a track, you're like, this is a good deer.
What it tells me is that there's a mature deer living there, because I mean, I know some of the biggest bodied deer I've had on camera over the last 4 or 5 years have been 130, 140 inch deer, but they are massive old regressed deer.
Yeah.
I mean, they're huge.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I'm not necessarily seeing a big track and thinking, oh, I'm going to hunt here. What I'm thinking is this area, the way he's using this, is able to grow, like I said, a grumpy old man. They're creatures of habit. I don't know if you know a lot of like your grandpa. Like my grandpa, does the same thing every day. And I kind of think that's almost the same thing. These mule deers, it's all like a miracle for these bucks to grow. I mean, especially in Washington. So for these things to get big, I think they have to have a mother that has good fat stores, right? They have to have a mother with good nutrition to be able to bear that good
Healthy fawn.
Yep, they also have to have a good healthy father. They have to be born on a good year. If they have a really hard winter, they'll be stillborn or they'll struggle to have good feed that year. And then there's I think how many cougars and wolves and people. I mean, it takes a miracle for a deer to get 4 or 5 years old. So whether it's 130 inches or 200 inches, finding an area that allows those bucks to grow big and those bucks are using that is a sign that there could be big deer there. And then you're also looking for the feed and nutrition that could also grow the big antlers too. So there's kind of a few things. And I don't really go into an area unless I think that the nutrition's there. So yeah, if I find a big track, I know there's a big deer there, or a big deer, but it doesn't always mean big antlers. If that
So you touched on nutrients. Are there specific types of plants or leaves or brush that you're looking for, or are you looking more so of the idea that it just needs to be abundant? Because there are, like, for example, like black bears, for example, right? Like they eat a lot of different things, but they will prioritize a certain feed over other things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the highly nutritious, feed, for example, they don't need a lot of it to get what they need. Whereas in an area where they don't have that highly nutritious feed, they can make up for it by just eating a bunch of lower nutrition feed. What do you look for when you're saying, I'm looking for feed that has potential to grow these big mature deer? Is it just a lot of feed, or is there a quality feed you're looking for?
I'm not a biologist. I have some plants that I couldn't tell you the names are that I'm like, okay, when I keep that in mind, like I look for those plants. In general, I've found that it's like the greener part of the area is like, usually by October, September, a lot of the open ridges are burnt off. They're golden brown. There's not a whole lot of nutrients in that.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you get like a little ridge or something with a little bit of water or more shaded with big timber, or on the north side, there's going to be, or what I found is the brush that grows on the edges of where there's sunlight and where there's a lot of shade.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where he was feeding when I killed him. He was feeding on the edge of that ridge top where there was a bunch of thick deadfall, and then there was a little bit of brush right along that edge there.
And that's something that you hear a lot of people talk about, primarily more so about like west side hunting, where like they have massive clear cuts up against dark timber edges, and they'll be like, yes, you don't glass the clear cut, you glass the edges, because a lot of times that's where the big bucks will be feeding.
Into the timber.
You're glassing in there because, one, it provides cover for them. They're not fully exposed, but at the same time, I personally, again, like not a biologist, but I just think that feed along that line is so nutritious because it's open enough where it gets enough sunlight, but it doesn't get overexposed to the sun where it gets dried out, because half the day it's in sunlight, half the day it's in the shade, right?
Yes.
Another thing you had mentioned is that initial spot that you put a camera in 2023 was by a pond.
Yep.
And those ponds that you found that you were thinking might be a good water source had dried up by the end of summer.
Yeah.
So was there an additional water source that you didn't, like, do you know what the water source was that this buck was using? Or was there still kind of scattered ponds along this ridge top? Or do you think it was like going way down, dropping a lot of elevation down into like a creek bottom?
Well, I've pretty much gridded the whole 1 mile radius around where that camera was. There's a few little areas I didn't go, but his nearest water was a ways. I mean, we're talking probably 1,000 feet down and a mile over. I mean, which isn't that far from Mule Deer, but
for us, it's a long ways though.
Yeah, well, especially it's not like just walking down a trail. Like you're climbing deadfall. There's no trails that go down to the nearest water. On one of them, there is to the other one, but I'm gonna be honest. I don't think that a lot of these deer really use water. I think that a lot of their feed keeps them hydrated for the most part. Because I actually had a camera on the water.
They just never drank.
Not had a single mule deer on it, just whitetails, and it's about 800 feet lower than him, and about a mile and a quarter from where that camera was. Never even had a mule deer on it.
It's something that Spong and I were just texting a little bit about earlier, just talking about specifically this coming season with having such a
terrible
dry, warm winter. I mean, we've been in it was almost 50 degrees today in February, and I was out with my daughter shed hunting at elevation that normally would have multiple feet of snow, and it was like spring, spring growth already.
Yeah.
Like it was greening up. So, which makes me think that the water sources are going to become this coming fall, it's going to be drier, likely. I mean, this is all speculation, but based on where we're at right now, the fall is going to be drier. Feed could be harder, could be more like in the deep timber type stuff. Those opens are going to get burnt off really early. Mm-hmm. And then the animals that do require or that do depend on the water sources are going to be maybe tied a little bit more to that water. But what you're saying is you're not sure how tied those mature deer are if they have a really, really moist, nutrient dense feed.
I can think of one buck that I know was hitting water, but it was just so happened there was like a little seep, and it was in the middle of a bunch of good feed and bedding. I don't think he was there because of the water. I think he was
convenience to him.
Yes, I never actually got a picture of him hitting the water. I got pictures of him hitting the salt that was next to the water.
What about the does? Those weren't even hitting the water either.
The whitetails, I had some nice whitetail bucks and stuff, but I just don't think it's common. I'm sure it happens, but I just don't think that
it's not something you've noticed.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
So you don't put too much emphasis on a water source per se.
No, I'll put emphasis on, like, if there's a hillside that's got no cover and I know it gets sunlight, 10, 12 hours a day in the summer, I won't even think about it because, I mean, there might be deer on it in June, but the big bucks most likely aren't going to be there. I mean, there's probably some situational things where they might be, but I'm not focusing on those areas at all. I'm actually trying to avoid those and find the closest spots that look more like what I want.
You're prioritizing feed more so than water,
Yeah.
is what you're saying.
Yep. Feed, and then good bedding where the wind's going to be able to be in their advantage. Because this is still like some hypothesis and some theories, but I think that these big bucks in the thick timber are a lot like timber whitetails, and I've kind of been trying to study more. I think they live by their nose a lot.
I mean, you have to in that country.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise they'd already be wolf poop or cat poop. I mean, it's
because basically what you were kind of explaining to me just reminds me so much of when I still was like hunting with my cousins a lot in North Idaho for elk. Like you'd have elk 20 yards in front of you and you just can't see them because it's so thick. And they just are so smart. Like they will purposely take routes where they can't see you and you can't see them until they hit your wind and then they whirl. Yep. And so like to me, it just kind of screams in the same pattern where like when you're in thick country, you start prioritizing what's going to make you survive, which in this case is your nose and your ears more than your eyes per se. Yep. Whereas like, sagebrush antelope, for example, it's all about their eyesight. They're just looking miles away to see if there's any predators walking in on them.
Yep.
And something we talked about this in a podcast with Clayton and Colton Vining, the Bearded Brothers, who actually hopefully will be one of our guests here in a couple weeks for you guys. But we talked about it in regards to elk hunting with the fact that elk behavior in Northeast Washington is not quite as classic as a lot of the Montana and Wyoming elk behavior. You have these big open south faces and then these timbered north faces, and they bed on the north and come feed out in the south and follow this perfect textbook pattern of elk behavior. Because in Northeast Washington, there is aggressive landscape and there are steep inclines and steep faces, but there's a lot of faces where there's timber on both the north and south face. There's openings, small openings on both the north-south face. I noticed you had mentioned still focusing quite a bit on those north faces throughout your hunting. Do you feel like you still find differences out there, like more nutrition on the north side, more shade, even without like these crazy kind of big mountain ranges that we're hunting in?
It's been very mountain dependent for me. I found some that I thought would be on the north side, and they're really not. And I found them on the south side, actually. I've found some. I mean, they're on all sides of the mountain. It's really the defining factors is going to be where their feed is. And then I think they like to be around where the beds are, where the wind's going to come up to them, and they're going to have the advantage with the wind every day.
So it's more so of wind and feed versus sunlight exposure. Because a lot of times people, elk speaking particularly, they will say north-facing slope because that is simply the most shaded part of the mountain in like September, right?
Yep.
And then the south-facing slope, they emphasize that in late season because you're getting more sunlight exposure, which means the elk might want to be over there because it's warmer.
Uh-huh.
But to you, it's almost like void for you. It's almost like you're creating your own rule book because basically what you just talked about, like I would have never guessed like what you're emphasizing would not be what I would, prematurely be emphasizing as well.
Can I go a little deeper on that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so I think in the summer, we're hunting grumpy old men right now. What's something that's going to annoy them? It's bugs, right? Do bugs fly a lot in the wind?
Not really.
No. So if you could go off the north side and have no wind at all and just have a little bit of thermals to your advantage and just get splattered by bugs all day, and this is, if it's in a burn, and the north side's kind of open, yeah, I'm all about the north side depending on how the wind's hitting. But if let's say your north side is just thick timber and there's nothing there for them, but the south side's got a little bit of an open ridge where the wind's hitting them all day and they can sit in the shade under a tree, you're going to pick that every time because you're more comfortable. You got the wind hitting you. You're also safer. And again, and that's when they got their summer coats when it's hot out. Now we're going over to September, right on them when they shed their velvet. Everyone's like, oh, they shed their velvet, they disappear. They're a whole different animal. Not really. I mean, yes and no, but you got to think at that time, the feed, we're starting to get our first frost. So the feed's changing, right? So a lot of that feed's burning off, and you're also having plants, they have their nutrients go down to their roots, and they're not really out in the... So I think their feed changes a little bit, and I actually saw this. I can go into the story of this year if you'd like. But their feed's going to change, and then they're getting this new coat. So you're putting a grandpa in a hot winter coat in September.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be moving very much? No.
Probably not,
I mean, you think they're limiting their movement as much as they can, and they're going to want that wind on them. You got to have a breeze to be able to cool off. And the bugs are there, but they're kind of starting to die off. But they're mostly, I mean, they want to survive and they want to be comfortable, and they want to be able to keep eating. So a lot of these times where people are like, "Oh, there's just no deer here," but there really is. They're just in these very small pockets that you have to be looking for, and it's not always what looks the best. It's sometimes just what's made them survive. I mean, these deer, it's a miracle to survive a day in some of these places, and I mean, some of these deer are 7, 8 years old.
That's a long time for here.
That's a creature of habit with that.
And this is something you mentioned to me before the podcast, because you had seen good buck tracks in this area where this buck was. But as far as body size go, this was not an old regressing deer, right? Because you had it aged. And you said before the podcast that its body was not, it's not one of those tracks that you would necessarily see and be like, this is the big man.
No. So he was 4.5. So he wasn't super old. But other bucks I've shot I know have been older, and even 4.5 is the number. I don't have any stats, but I think it's way lower than what most people think. How many deer up here actually get to 4.5? It's
most mule deer in Washington are dying at 2.5.
Yeah,
the first year they turn 3 point.
Yeah, it's just they don't make it that old very often. So I think even they're just an anomaly even to make it to 4.5. So what has made them get to 4.5 is what they've done with their lives. They've lived by the wind. Because if they don't live by the wind, they're dead.
Yep.
And whatever they're living, they're avoiding people and they're avoiding predators. So why change what's working, right? Because there's a risk of going out somewhere else and dying. So I think a lot of these, grumpy old men, whatever you want to call it, they're just creatures of habit. They get up, they read their newspaper in the morning, they eat their, get their coffee and eat their breakfast, and then they go take a nap or whatever. But I really think that it's pretty similar to that, and they don't want to be messed with. They just want to,
Yeah, I think it's true because it's kind of one of those, the deer might not necessarily know as we know as don't fix what's not broken, but it truly is like that. The deer, especially over the years, these really big mature bucks, they will be in places where they encounter a lot of people, and they quickly learn, like, that's a place I don't want to be. Yep. And then they have these little hidey holes. It's like, oh, nobody ever bothers me. And so over the span of that deer's life, especially as he gets older, they start kind of shrinking where they want to spend their time, and then later or not, they just kind of figure out where they can go without having to be bothered. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's extremely hard to find these mature bucks sometimes, because if you just can't get right on them, it's kind of like they just don't exist. Well, where in reality they do exist, you're just not, stepping right on top of them. I mean, in your case that you shot them at 30 yards, if you were just 15 yards above where you were standing, could you have seen him?
No.
You would have walked right past him.
If I was 15 yards the other way, there was no way I would have had a chance.
You would have, yeah, exactly.
Because I would have been in the opening. Yeah, he would have been head on for me. I doubt I ever would have killed him.
So it's which is why you kind of brought it up earlier. The fact that you were able to find yourself in that position in that country is already miraculous in it of its own. And on top of that, just him standing there, actually, just looking at you and giving you time to pull the shot off. That's incredible, man.
It is. And this is a great transition. Something I want to pivot a little bit towards is you kind of have a little bit of both teams here in the fact that you're consistent for Washington, consistent killing giant deer. Killing one in 2021 and killing one in 2024. Killing a big deer every year is a serious feat for Northeast Washington.
But let's just take that with a caveat before you go on. I'm sure you had opportunities in 2022 and 2023. You just didn't see what you wanted to shoot.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way. I was about not giving up 30 seconds. Or if I would have not given up 30 seconds before, I would have killed another 160, I think. See. I had the wind right. I was going up, and I just thought, all right, well, I'm almost to the top of the mountain. There's nothing between me and the mountain. And he was actually in a hole where a tree had fallen. He was inside that hole, and I couldn't see him. And I get to 40 yards, and all of a sudden he's there, and it's the buck I was trying to hunt, and he's hopping away from me.
But the reason I just bring that up as a caveat, because the track record of filling tags will say, okay, you shot 2 in the past 4 or 5 years or so, but it doesn't tell the whole story, right? Just because you walk out of a hunt with the tag not filled doesn't mean you weren't close or you didn't have opportunities.
Right. So consistently having opportunities at mature deer, But at the same time, a lot of these guys that do this live out there. They are both obsessed with it and they live out there. You don't meet a whole lot of people that have figured out how to do this with a fairly limited amount of time. I mean, the way that you're talking, you know, as up to this point, working almost full time and then being a full-time student and then being a husband and a soon-to-be father. I mean, I understand that, except for the school portion, and time is limited. And that's like, for most people, time is limited to a couple weekends, and that's maybe a couple weekends scouting and a couple weekends during the season, and maybe a little time off if you have it. And so what are some of the things that you've done to optimize your time out in the woods for yourself, for the minimum amount of time that you'd have?
I would say it's one almost, and this is, you'll see this across the board. Anyone that's consistently successful for mule deer, they've all got the same mindset, and it's a never give up, take advantage of every second you have kind of mindset. And a lot of them you're going to see are like, most people don't want to hunt with me because I am so all about small details. I could sit here and talk about little intricate things about mule deer that most people wouldn't think matters at all. I'll straight up tell you, my dad's told me that I'm annoying to hunt with sometimes because I'm so much about small details, and I'm just too into it for him to where like I hunt with him, but I have to take a step back when I hunt with him. And I love hunting with my dad, love hunting with my grandpa, but I think when you're hunting something that there's so many variables here, you want to eliminate all the variables you can, and just having the mindset of every single small detail you have matters. Like your wind, like 15 minutes before I shot him, I took off my gaiters because I didn't like that they were making a little bit of they were just kind of slightly rubbing my boots. Not even swishing. They just made a little like when you know, like when a rope gets really tight and it kind of makes like a little bit of a whine almost.
Crack, squeak type thing.
Not even that, like a little moan almost. And it was very light, but I didn't like it. And I mean, not saying that that's the reason I killed the deer, but like that's the kind of mindset you have to have to where every single second you have up there, you got to be looking, okay, what's the wind doing right now? Am I seeing tracks here? If the thermals are hitting up this way and a prevailing wind's hitting this way, what's the wind doing when you go up this ridge? Or, okay, so the tracks are coming, almost all the tracks are coming up from here. They're probably feeding in this area, or, you know, things like that, to where I'm not just going out in the woods every day and be like, oh, there's another 190, you know, whatever. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I looked over 100 different mule deer bucks this year in one unit. How many do you think went over 160?
Single digits.
0.
Really?
Maybe 1. But this year we had an incredibly dry spring, and I know of at least 10 to 12. I would have to go back and look, but it was 10 a while, and I'm pretty sure it ended up being 12 that were smaller this year than they were last year.
Yeah.
So well, you and I had talked about this back at the end of summer when I had a whitetail, a mature whitetail that I was watching that was smaller this year than last year.
Yeah, actually, I was talking to Clayton Vining. He's going to be on the podcast here soon. I was talking about it with him today, that we're worried about the woods, you know, catching on fire if we don't get any more. But just with
dry feed.
Well, yeah, because last year we had no snowfall down low, but we had really good snowfall up high, to where I thought it'd be optimal. Yeah, I think if the deer migrated down, they had a super easy winter, so they're not very much stress on them, but there's still water up high. So I thought it was going to be a great year for antler growth, but it was actually terrible. Like, I mean, the one that my cousin shot this year, I bet it was pushing 170 last year, and it was a 3x4 this year, barely. It had like a 4-inch G2 or 4-inch G3 off of it. I mean, incredible buck. I don't want to take anything away. This buck was huge, big body, old.
He was just a culprit of bad feed.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was talking about, like with the miracles, is like it takes a miracle to get a buck to 5+ years of age. But it could literally just be, this buck was really big last year, but we had a terrible growth year. Like, you could go find a 150 buck this year and think, oh, they just never got the genetics. Could have been 180 last year, or maybe not quite that, but...
Yeah, and it sounds like a stretch for the people who probably have never seen it, but I saw it because Ephron, Hunter Sis, what we had on a few weeks ago, he shot a 360-inch bull in Utah. And at the beginning of the spring, when they first started growing basically their G1s to like about the G4, like, I mean, it's a 360 bull, so you can imagine just how big his lower half of his antlers were. But towards the end of the season, like towards the tail end of the velvet season, his G6 and G5, they look like dwarves. Yeah. And when you look at the overall antler of this 360 bull that Ephron has shot, it's like the fronts don't match the back. But basically, when he took it into the taxidermy was basically just telling him, like, at the beginning of the season, he was just eating a lot. There was a lot of good nutrition. Towards the tail end of the season, one of two things happened. Either he just stopped eating as much, or the feed just really dropped in nutrition level. And so that's why he just really looked not that good up top. But down low, I mean, he's a gorgeous bull. I mean, it's a 360 class bull, even though he's lacking the back. But then the taxidermy estimated, like, if he kept that same feed throughout the whole velvet season, he would have been like a 390 bull. We're talking about 30 inches of bone just from like 3 weeks or so of lack of nutrition.
Yeah.
So I understand you saying like he could be 180 last year and 150 this year, which means that buck right there was a 180 the year before I went in there and shot him.
It's a great way to look at it for sure. I mean, it's a great way to be optimistic.
That's one other characteristic you're going to see is what I was getting at is you don't see a big buck every day when you're out there. I mean, I had multiple glassing sessions this year where I'm like, okay, I'm going to bank on seeing a deer in this small area. I saw 0 deer. I hiked, 2.5 miles in. I got up, I left my house at 2 a.m. on a, Saturday morning, I had work, and I didn't see any deer. So I left my house at 2 a.m., got like no sleep for no reason. But then there's other days where you glass up 4 bucks and 2 of them are shooters, and that might be one day a summer. It was one day this summer.
But to you, it's like, it's worth it though. Like, you can have 7 just complete Saturday duds, but then the 8th weekend, you glass up that 1 or 2 bucks, and you're just like, that's why I've been getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning, squeezing time before or after work to go do it. Because like you, a lot of people are culprits to the weekend warrior life. And unfortunately, there's things outside of hunting that happen. They might have something that comes up. But to add to what Nate was saying, the people who are like truly obsessed with this, they will find every excuse possible to avoid every other duty that happens on Saturday and says, I need to get to this mountain, And so it seems like that's kind of what you do, and that's obviously paid off well for you. But the reason why we wanted to emphasize it, because Nate and I, we do have a pretty good luxurious time amount in the summer where we can do like 3-4 days if we wanted to. But to you, you're kind of just day tripping it almost.
Yeah.
And you're making it work. But then I guess you've kind of already answered the question. You have limited time. You're willing to sacrifice other things to go scout. But then even when you're out there, you're being effective with the amount of time that you have. Because one of the things that Austin Harris brought up when I did the podcast with him last year, he's like, one of the biggest problems that people face when they're scouting is because it's scouting and it's not hunting, they don't put in the same effort. So they'll wake up when the sun's already up. They'll get there like 11 o'clock in the morning, and they go glass a base and they don't see anything. Well, yeah, because all the deer are bedded. Whereas if you were there at first light, like you would be if you were hunting, you could have probably seen all these bucks that you would now put as your target.
I can actually add a story onto that. So I leave my house, and my plan is to be sitting down 15 minutes before I can see. If you're there at sunset, you're late.
You're talking about summer scouting.
Yes.
And so you're there like at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Because
I'm leaving my house at 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Which I know is not a reality for everyone, but I justify it because if I can, go to bed early that night, maybe miss a little bit of time, but then I can, let's say, really, I mean, sometimes you can glass longer if you have the whole day. I glass all day if you can. But I mean, let's say you get that first hour and a half of prime time, you'd be back home by 10 o'clock and still have the day with your family. So that's kind of where like I kind of try to find that healthy medium. But I mean, an example today or this summer, I parked my truck and I was already running a little bit late, and there's only one spot to park because this road is rough. There's nowhere to turn around. It's like drop off. I don't want to park anywhere else. I pull up to the parking spot and there's a guy camped. So then I kind of felt bad. I'm like pulling up to this guy's camp spot, 4 a.m. So then I'm like trying to be kind of quiet. And he comes out and talks to me a little bit, and I'm already running a little bit behind. And, I'm nice to him, talk to him for a little bit, and then end up running up on the ridge. I got there 10 minutes after like daylight enough to see, and I saw 2 bucks. They were both young bucks, and I saw like 5 does. And I was like, man, I was kind of thinking I had a bunch of really nice bucks on this camera. I was kind of wanting to hopefully see them. Well, I ended up getting the pictures later that day, and there was a nice floor plan out on that hillside, but he crossed my camera heading off to the north side 5 minutes after the gray. It was still a gray picture, but but I know for sure because he came from that hillside, and there's no doubt in my mind that's where he was feeding.
Yep.
But
yeah, I mean, I bring it up, and especially in the summertime, because the summertime is so different from like, let's say late September or October, because those are extremely hot days. Like the moment that sun hits you, you feel that heat. And like these deer are wearing a coat pretty much year round. So like they're especially hasty to get out of it.
Yep.
And so they will, like what your camera was telling you, like before the sun even hits them, they're already on their way to go and find a bed.
Yeah, they're vampires. They hate the sun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that totally answers my question. It's just, it's cool to talk to people that do this, you know, all the time. Like you get the privilege to live and breathe this stuff more or less 6-7 days a week for all year round through the scouting season as well. But a lot of people who have all these other commitments of family and job and everything, you know, they don't know how to allocate their time or where to allocate it. You know, if I want to kill a mature mule deer, like, is it worth taking a little bit of extra time to scout them out and maybe sacrifice some time in the hunt? You know, you don't always get to pick the best of everything. And so I think just kind of getting your view on that, like you said, and basically just using every little bit of time you have, but even what it sounds like is a little bit is good. Like if you can't get out for 3 days, that's okay. If you can only get out for like a prime time morning somewhere, do it and take that opportunity.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a good a note for the regulars out there, because like I put you in that class of like the normal guy. Like you don't live per se in mule deer country. It's not out your back door. You're doing your normal job. You're doing your family thing. You're doing your school thing, like most of us are. And so it's like those are the caveats that most people throw out there. Is like, well, I can't do that because, you know, it's a couple hour drive out to mule deer country. Or I can't do that because, you know, I only have Saturday. And I you know, that's the day with my family. But you can make that work, especially in the summertime with scouting, when you do have the advantage of the longer days. That you may have to sacrifice some sleep, but it is possible to do, and it's possible to do, and it's worth it, obviously, because it has a good chance of adding to your success in the field during hunting season.
I got married this summer, so I didn't get to scout as much as I obviously would have liked to, but I still got to get out, and I did a lot of like morning glasses and then headed back home. I scouted pretty big. You know, I threw out a big net. I had probably, you know, 10, 15 cameras out, which I understand isn't possible for everybody. But and then I was also glassing, and a lot of time I would use those cameras. You know, if I'd have a big buck cross it, I'd try to go glass. And, you know, I'm like, okay, well, if he's on this ridge and he's coming from this direction, I think he's probably feeding in this area, right? Well, sometimes you're right and sometimes you're wrong. And sometimes I'm wrong, even though some of these mountains I've hunted for, 4 or 5 days, and maybe you are right, but he's just not there that day. I actually had one spot I glassed this year, and the only reason I glassed this ridge was because my cousin used to hunt this. And there's this really good feeding ridge that isn't what you'd typically be looking for, but the way the wind is, the way the cover is, and the amount of feed in this small area, it was holding 4 bucks there, like in a very small area. Well, we went and glassed those bucks, and then I went and put a camera up on the ridge top, thinking when they crossed over north-south and east-west, I'd get pictures of them there. Well, I left that camera up from mid-June to October. Guess how many bucks crossed that camera? And this is a half mile as a crow flies on the best main trail I could find on top of the ridge. Not a single buck crossed that camera. Less than half a mile away. The moral of the story is that you can't just give up after like, okay, well, there was no deer on this ridge. There's no deer living here. Because I think that's what most guys end up doing is if they go out and scout, they're like, oh, I didn't see anything or nothing was on my camera. And that's where the power of hunting the same spot and not giving up is you learn that area more and more. That you could be missing by 400 yards, but if they have everything they need, they don't leave. I actually hunted those 4 bucks. There was 2 of them that were shooters, and that's where I hunted. I sat on a stand, like I call it a stand, but I sat in the same spot for 12 hours straight during hunting season in the rain. You know, it rained really hard our rifle season this year. I didn't move. I watched that hillside the whole time, and it didn't pay off until the last day. I ended up, I had some rifle difficulties. I won't go into too much to make it too long, but I missed a good 4-point buck with double kickers this year. Missed him twice, and after I shot, I missed like way right and way low both shots. But after I played them back, after I shot the second time and realized I missed again, I went and looked. I had a video on it, and they couldn't have. I mean, they were in like a 3-inch radius circle. I mean, so I was thinking like, okay, maybe it's not me if I'm missing like the same spot like that. So I didn't shoot again, and then I think it was like 15 minutes later, I spotted another buck on the same hillside. But he was bedded up right above where that feed was on the edge of timber, and all you could see was a butt behind a tree.
Oh, so he was there the whole time.
Yeah, he was there the whole time. But I had been glassing that hillside the whole morning. So it's like, just because you don't see them doesn't mean they're not there, especially when they get that gray coat. Because, I watched these bucks in the summer, so I kind of knew where they wanted to be. So the moral of the story is, like, scout more, hunt small. Like, I had 5 days to hunt this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw what I would consider probably a better season than what everyone else had. Or not everyone else, but like majority of the average hunter, they don't see, multiple 4-point mature bucks.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't pay off till the last day.
Mm-hmm.
But I went out in the summer, and I never went out and didn't at least see a 4-point buck. This summer I went out and glassed 4 times. And I at least saw one 4-point buck or more every single time.
When you explain that stuff, it parallels so much of what Austin told me
Yes.
about. And basically, his idea is that, figuratively speaking, he kills the bucks during scouting season.
Yeah.
He has them patterned by the time hunting season rolls around. But one of the things that I want to specifically talk about you, because Austin, he really focused on high country deer hunting, which is middle of September 15th through the 25th. But the reason why I wanted to pick your brain on this is because a lot of people, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, they will say that depending on the time of the season, these bucks kind of changed patterns. But talking to you and listening to you explain your story, it seems like you're glassing up these bucks in these beds in October that they were using in the summer.
Yes.
Like, they're still in the same beds.
Yep.
So where did you figure out that, like, oh, they just don't even ever leave the area? They're still here, using the same beds, same trails sometimes, same feeding areas sometimes.
Well, that's the thing is, sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. And it's super situational. And I think a lot of it is whether the feed dries up or whether, because it's all about, they live and die by their stomachs, right? They're slaves to their stomachs. They have to eat. I think the biggest bucks, usually like the bully buck that I was hunting this year, everyone got off the trail when he walked up the trail. Like, everyone got off. Even the buck that I thought was actually the biggest, he was the best scoring buck by far. But he wasn't as heavy, but he's just a little, I think he was a year or two younger. But they get the best feed where it's the most optimal to live. And if that slightly changes, depending on the way the ridge lays, like this particular spot, the feed was super green all summer in August. And when I actually went out and glassed this ridge the Saturday before opening weekend and saw the 4-point double kicker buck. But he used the same trail, but he was there at daylight. And he went through the opening very quickly before the sun came up. And I watched him for an hour in the trees, feeding in the shade on the edge of that timber. You wouldn't have just seen him like if you would have just picked up your glass and been there. If you wouldn't have watched him walk across the opening, you'd never see him. I would be sitting there staring at him through a spotting scope and not be able to see him for minutes at a time, knowing exactly which tree he was behind. And you just don't see him because... that's why they call them gray ghosts and vampires. They hate the sun. I think I have one video of him in the sun and watched him for over an hour.
That's a great point, because you don't hear that a lot about mule deer. Well, you often hear that type of gray ghost term is for like black-tailed deer and like coos deer. But clearly, like, these mule deer, as big as they are, they're still pretty finicky to find sometimes. And like you, like Nate and I, we've been on multiple hunts where like we're literally looking at an animal and following this animal, weaving through the trees and in and out, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, he's gone. Because in our high country hunt in 2022, there was a doe. Do you remember that doe?
Mm-hmm.
That, like, we watched her feed up in this area, and we saw her bed behind this tree. Like, we know exactly what tree she was bedded behind, and it wasn't even a big tree. It was like one of those little 4-foot pines or spruces, and she vanished. And we're just like, what the heck, dude? Like, is that really how these deer are? And then, like, when the evening came up, we look, and then all of a sudden, it's like the whole hillside was just crawling with different deer. Like, 15 different deer around this one vicinity.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's funny, because your story was, like, completely, like, obsolete with glassing. And then now you're like, sometimes you got to glass really hard.
Well, that's actually kind of what I learned this summer, is that you're going to waste a lot of time glassing, but it's going to pay off the most. In my opinion, there's some areas that I don't glass. I only have cameras. But I'm kind of leaning towards the areas where you can glass into certain little areas where kind of my whole strategy is I have cameras out just to tell me where I'm going to go glass. And if I can't, like, let's say this summer comes up, I have a big buck hit a camera in July. I'm going to go out the next weekend I can. I'm going to go glass all morning of where I think the best feeding bedding area would be for the most optimal spot for that buck to be. If I don't see him, depending on how much time I have. If I have more time that day in July, I'll probably go walk it. I'm probably gonna go. I'm gonna go look for tracks. I'm gonna go hang cameras. I'm gonna go look to see what they're eating. Like go see, like physically go look at the bushes and see which ones are being eaten, which ones aren't. Sometimes you can't really tell which mule deer, what's not. Sometimes you can because it's really only what's living there for the most part. But and I'm gonna pay attention to the wind. I'm gonna figure out how they're gonna use it.
So one note on that, do you notice a significant wind change from like say July and October? Or is it pretty much predominantly the same thing?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not gonna act like I know everything. I'm kind of still in the process of learning this. This is kind of something I've been trying to talk to some guys that really know the wind. I actually been trying to talk to you. You guys know who Troy Pottinger is? Yeah. I've been trying to talk with him about trying to learn how he analyzes the wind because that's kind of my next step in how I want to try to get. Because the way I've kind of found success is, I guess this is probably a better answer for that question you asked me earlier, is you want to get inside the mind of these deer. You don't want to think about it like a human would. And that's kind of what I've kind of said without saying is I'm thinking about the wind. I'm thinking about, you know, they got these gray coats. It's super hot. They're avoiding the sun. You got to think about their feed changing and all these things. You got to think like a deer in all these circumstances, which is really hard. But
that's why you make him into an old man. It's easier to think about an old man.
yeah, well, it really is. You're hunting an old man who's just a creature of habit. He's going to do what's kept him alive because, you know, that's the only thing he knows that works.
Wow. So yeah, you basically nailed it on the head with, first off, you did an excellent job explaining all your little scouting techniques because really like that kind of answered a lot of the little holes that I was missing when it came to these mule deer up here in the Northeast region. Granted, like I haven't really spent much time actually like targeting mule deer up here because like I've seen some mule deer around primarily in the springtime when like we've had normal winter years, I would say, where the snow actually pushes these mule deer down low where I normally would hunt whitetail and I need to go pick up a camera or something. But the way you approach how you pursue these mule deer, it's so different than what I'm accustomed to because how you hunt these deer, even though, for example, like you still hunted for this buck. I still hunt a lot of deer camp, but because it's two completely different terrain and habitat and regions, you are so much more cognizant about some of the little details where I would kind of just glance over. Because like, for example, like where we deer camp, like even though you're still hunting, you can sometimes still see like 200-300 yards in the trees. Whereas for you, like you really don't have that option. And so you have to be so meticulous about sometimes even just taking a step or like what you're actually looking through because I'll be honest, like there are multiple times where like I'm still hunting and I think like I'm doing a very good job scanning, right? And then I bump a doe that's standing like 50 yards wide open, broadside in the open. And I'm like, how did I miss that? Right? Like, and when I think I'm doing it so well, but then you take that in particular and you elevate it to another level because you're looking at way thicker timber, right? And sometimes, like you said, you're looking at just glimpses of a deer. You don't even get to see the entire deer because of how thick it is. And so part of that success, I feel like, has been helpful to you because you've been able to dial in that without really having someone hold your hand doing it. And that's something that I wanted to applaud you for because like some people, and you know, I think I speak for a lot of people, when you just tell somebody to go do something that they're completely unfamiliar with, they don't really know where to start. And so when they don't know where to start, they don't really know what they're actually doing wrong and what they're actually doing right. But for you to be able, again, considering how young you are and how limited you are with hunting these specific mule deer, like you've learned very quickly how to hone in your strategies and perfect what your craft is essentially. And so does that have to do something with maybe that's just who you are, maybe that's how you've always been wired, or is there something that you kind of learned about that specific herd that said, hey, these are things that I don't need to do, and these are just the things that I need to do? Like, where did you learn that from?
I gotta give a lot of credit. My grandpa and my dad, you know, my grandpa he's like, I don't know, I think I'm like the 5th generation to be living where I'm at. So he's a logger. So he's raised on all this. So he kind of gave me the first little bits. Like he was kind of like my footstep in the water of paying attention to wind and stuff and actually just being patient glassing. He's, as a kid, I was like giving up on glassing. It was like 8:30 in the morning. And he's like, no, get your binoculars up. There's deer out here. You just need to go spot them. 5 minutes later, I spot a webbed, non-typical, probably 170s, 160s type buck.
Jeez.
Bedded. And this is like 800 yards. You know, I'm like a 12-year-old. I'm losing my mind. But you know, and my first instinct would be, okay, we need to go over and find that deer, like run over right now. And he's kind of taught me, be patient. No, like those deer, we've hunted this spot for the same way for, 10 years. He's most likely going to come do this. And it didn't end up working out, but he actually ended up walking 300 yards from one of our buddies.
Oh.
But he only had a quick little split second. And that's where you can't just get complacent, because that's what every single big buck that I've had an opportunity at that I didn't kill was a time where I got complacent. It's actually, I can think of 2 off the top of my head where, they're not giants, but they're ones that most people would be, like, holy cow. And
Yeah.
I mean, great mature bucks. I've never taken anything from them.
I just wanted to bring up that little point right there because that's something that doesn't get talked about enough, I feel like. Because, like you, people focus on the things that are glamorous and very exciting. But when it comes to these nitty-gritty details, like the dirty work, if you will, people don't want to talk about it because people don't want to actually do it. Like, for example, when you explain how when you were still hunting right before you shot this buck, where you were taking one step and waiting there for like 3 minutes. On the surface level, it's like, yeah, you stood there for 3 minutes. But, man, when you're actually doing it, 3 minutes standing in a spot is a long time.
Oh, yeah.
And nobody wants to do it because, like you, when I've been still hunting in the past, it's like I do it perfectly, and then I just go, oh, man, I just need to get over there. It's like 50 yards. Let me just run over there really quick. And then, boom, buck blows out.
Yep.
So it's the little details because another thing about it, too, and this is actually a video I have, 2023, same year, or I guess the year before, but opening day mule deer, like I was sent on this stalk after this super gnarly looking buck. And think in mind, like my brother is glassing from afar, literally telling me like every little thing the deer's doing. So when the deer's bedded, he's like, the deer's bedded, he's facing the other way. He was telling me every little detail, meaning I could play the cards to my advantage, right? And I remember I was standing on this rock because I actually ended up losing sight of where I actually was. And so I was coming in up top from the buck, which I shouldn't have. And when I was standing on top of the rock, my brother was like, dude, don't move. Like, he's looking your direction. In my head, I'm like, I didn't even do anything. I'm literally just standing here. But then my brother was like, dude, he's literally like, he's pinned you. And I'm like, there's no way. I can't even see the deer. And I remember I'm standing like this, and it's kind of like you're on rocks, but you know how there's like little pebbles almost. And I was like, oh, there's a little pebble under my shoe. I need to take my shoe off of that so that I don't have like that pebble rolling on the rocks and making that little gritty sound. I literally took it off like slow and put my feet down, and boom, that buck took off. And I was like, see, if my brother didn't tell me that, and let's say I didn't even know that buck was there, no way in the world would I have ever guessed that I jumped a buck. I would have just been like, oh, yeah, I went out, didn't see anything today. And how many times has that happened to people where they were probably within a close proximity of a very mature buck, but just because they're so smart and they were just not cognizant of their little details around their foot or whatever, costs them. Mm-hmm. Because for you to see 100 deer in a season, it means that we still have a pretty good number of deer around. But then, like you said, you would have probably not known those if you didn't scout them.
Yep.
Right? And so I feel like most people fall under that, again, being that culprit of not spending the time scouting. So when all they do is bank on what they're going to see during hunting season, especially when it's one of the times where it's the hardest to find a deer, let alone a mature buck, it's easy to get in the dumps of saying like, man, this hunting sucks.
Yep.
But then you're just kind of like, you flip the book on its head and you're just living proof of like, no, there's actually big bucks around and you just got to play your cards right.
Yeah, that's kind of what ties back into like what I said. I think my greatest weapon in hunting, it's not my custom rifle, it's not my boots or my gear or anything. It's my mindset. And I 100% believe that for almost anyone. And like I said, you asked like where I learned some of this, and I have to give credit where credit's due. If anyone knows who Robbie Denning is or his book, if you want to hunt mule deer, you need to get that book. I haven't read it, but he did a series of podcasts on the Rockcast, and he like kind of paraphrased every single one of his chapters. I listened to every single one of those 3 or 4 times. I mean, I'm an electrician, so I wire a lot. So I'm constantly always trying to learn. It's not just about mule deer, but my mindset is my greatest weapon. And the other thing with that mindset is scouting big and hunting small. You got to remember, in the summer, these deer are on their feet. I mean, I don't know what percentage it is, but way more than they are in October, to where one day of scouting could mean a week of hunting. Like, if I could pick between the two, it would probably be the one day of scouting. And most people, I don't think, look at it that way. But like I said, I mean, when I scouted this year, I saw a big 4-point buck every single time when I went out and glassed this one ridge. I hunted it for 4 days out of the 5 and didn't even see a deer. All I saw was one cougar. That's it.
Mm.
So, and on the very last day of the season is when it worked out for me. But if I would have not scouted that at all and sat there for 5 days straight, how many people are going to sit on a ridge? They have no idea what's living there for 5 days straight. It's just, especially, I mean, you got to remember, it was raining and sleeting for...
Terrible.
Yeah.
It was a horrible season.
I put on a rain jacket and all the layers I had, and I was sitting in a sleeping bag, shivering, sitting on my glass. That's how I ended up seeing that cougar. That cougar didn't walk across that opening. I spotted it on the edge of the timber walking because I was waiting for a buck to be in a second bed. I wasn't just watching the open feeding. I was waiting for him to. I figured that I probably missed him in the very first bit of the morning, and that's another thing. Quick tip: if you're looking through a spotting scope and you're under 2 miles and you haven't spotted deer yet, you're doing it wrong, in my opinion. I think that you need to be scanning with your binoculars all the time, and that's something that I have to give credit again. Robbie Denning and Dione Amuchastagi, top 2 hunters in the world. Maybe not top 2.
There's a top 2 for you.
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
And I'm probably biased and whatever. But, I mean, those guys, they talk about this. And, you can listen to all these podcasts, but once you apply it in the field, it becomes real.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't ever big into glassing, but Dione's always like, you need to go glass. You need to go glass. And I did it this year, and I went and glassed a ridge that I would have never thought of glassing before. There's just a bunch of these, little 30-yard, little clearings.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, don't bring out your spotting scope until you find a big buck. Don't touch it. I saw more deer that morning than I have in my whole life. In a session, I think I saw 5 bucks and 7 does in an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we're talking we're Northeast Washington. It's not like there's a bunch of deer.
Low densities.
Yeah, but it's in the summertime. It was on a shaded hillside. It was a nice, clear morning. I saw a good, big, mature buck, actually. But what people don't tell you is that he was bedded at daylight. I saw him before even what would have been legal shooting light. He was actually one of the first things I saw as soon as I pulled up my binoculars. But that big field of view just gives you so much more chance because I think if these bucks, a lot of time, they're not moving. The buck my cousin shot this year, I spotted after I missed that buck. I watched him for a little over an hour. And if I would have been sitting on my gun with the safety off, I could have shot one time. He was bedded and... they move so slow. They're like a grandpa. They have their walkers and they move super slow and they stay in the shade. But if you have these big bucks that aren't moving, glassing a little timber tine with a spotting scope is going to be such a small chance compared to just catching them when they're moving in these openings. So I'm sitting there with these binoculars, and then once I saw that buck, I brought out my spotting scope, started videoing it. But while I'm videoing that deer, I'm still scanning all the edges of all the openings of these little small openings on this ridge. And I caught a little bachelor group of bucks, caught a doe and a fawn. There's a 15-yard wide opening at the very top where they head over the north side, and I caught a buck and a doe walking through it for about 5 seconds. It's just the mindset you got to have to just keep glassing, keep searching, keep gritting. I don't necessarily just go, like a graph, A1 to Z26, whatever. I just kind of watch the edges, and then if something's out in the open, you're going to see it.
Yep.
Especially being on binoculars with a tripod. You're nice and still, but you can kind of keep going at a nice, easy pace. And we're talking 2 miles or less, and maybe even just a mile or less, depending on what kind of area you're in. But yeah, I don't glass the spotter unless I have a buck I would think about shooting.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I hate glassing with a spotter because I just get dizzy.
Yep.
So maybe that's a good excuse to not glass with a spotter. But the only time I have glassed with a spotter was when I just noticed my binoculars were not enough power.
Mm-hmm.
You're glassing way too far. Where even if there was a deer on the opening, you probably wouldn't be able to distinguish that between a rock and a deer.
Yeah.
That's the only time. But I totally understand that because with the spotting scope, your field of view is often so small. And with you, it seems like if you're not catching them at the right moment, and a lot of times it's just a slither of movement, you're completely missing them. You remind me of Colin and Jason who just sit on their glass all day and they don't know how to put the binocular down. And sometimes it makes me mad. I'm like, dude, let's just take a break for 5 minutes, bro.
Early season whitetail, 65 degrees, 2 p.m., sun beating down.
They're still just
sitting there glassing.
And I'm like, dude, I just want to have a good time. Let's just talk something else for 10 minutes. And they just won't put the glass down because there's no, there's deer out here. Like, we got to find them. And, glass and blacktail country, like, you're just talking about giant burns because they're hunting way more like California type country versus like our Washington West Coast, for example, clear cut logging country. But you're kind of the same way. And like I said, man, folks, if you guys are listening at home, if you guys have listened to every single one of our podcasts, I hope there's some very distinctive correlations from the people who are consistently killing or at minimum locating these big mature bucks. Because if you haven't been tuning in or you haven't caught them, it's basically they scout hard and they scout effectively, and even on the hunt, they don't put that glass down. And if they're not glassing, in your case, your rifle's in the hand and you're moving like a turtle through the woods.
I actually, it'll go into some of the stuff I talked about earlier. It's a story. It's the day before we end up killing, or my cousin ended up killing the buck this year. Glassed all morning, sat till like I think 1 o'clock. Didn't move the whole time. Just glassed. Didn't get my spotter out. Just looked at the hillside. Didn't see a single deer. Ended up going over, and we had a little bit of snow on the north side, and it was just fresh, so I knew that there was a decent chance of tracking. Got on the very edge of the north side where I thought some good feed was. Caught a buck track. Wasn't huge, but a buck track for sure. There's a doe track next to it, and it was. And the way to tell a buck track, Austin Harris talks about it. They're blockier, they're bigger, but a lot of time, the bigger the buck, the wider the track is.
Yep.
And the blockier and more square it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I follow this track, and I'm going, like I said, I'm creeping on it. And I get to a bench off this north side, and I know I'm close somewhere. I'm thinking from where I've glassed these deer, where they go up to bed, I'm getting close to that area, and I don't want to go into it, but I'm just thinking about turning around because I don't want to interrupt what they're going, but I kind of want to see if they're still there. And I get to this bench, and I kind of stand on the edge of it, and there's like a little 10-yard clearing, 15-yard clearing where there's no trees. And I sit there and I don't glass, but I'm like scanning. And sometimes I'll glass if I can see, more than about 50 yards. And there's nothing there. No way I can see anything. I take a step and a deer jumps up and runs away. Never see it. I go back down, and it was the buck I was tracking. That's where the tracks were going. It bedded down in this spot where the prevailing wind came up with the thermals, and they combined right there on this ridge, on the side of this ridge where this bench hit. It's kind of like it was a really steep spot, and there was a bench right there.
Mm-hmm.
And it bedded right there, and the way the trees were, it could see my feet under the trees. But there's no way if I would have been, taller than my knees, there's no way I could have saw down into where this deer was at. But when I got down into his bed and looked, he could see down into, down below him and where all the wind was coming, and he could turn around and look up above him and see where other things couldn't see him unless they were sitting along the ground. And that's where I'm talking about, where sometimes you're going to do it and you're going to do everything right. You're going to have the wind in your face. You're going to go as slow as possible. You're going to sit there and look for 2 minutes before taking a step, and you're still not going to get it right.
You're just objectively losing.
Yeah.
And that's the same exact scenario as that buck that I was talking about when I was saying I was on that stalk and my brother was glassing. From his bed, he could see my feet.
Yep.
But from my view, all I saw was a tree. And even if that tree wasn't there, his bed was so perfect that there was some brush, and all I would see is his eyes poking above the brush anyway. And that's when it kind of opened my eyes, like, man, these bucks, man, they don't, if you ever see an animal for that matter and you see them bed, there is always a reason why they're bedding there. It's not like there's just oh, let me just plop down right here and sleep. No, usually it's and especially I learned this more when I do archery hunts, because with an archery hunt, you have to be way more dissective of how you actually plan a stalk, right? And so when you are forced to get within 40 yards of an animal and you start picking apart his bed, you start realizing man, those are some smart animals. They're not just blind. Antelope, I thought antelope were the dumbest thing ever until this year.
No.
I was like, dude, it's 12 o'clock. They're bedding in the middle of the sagebrush, man. How dumb can these things be? And then when you try to stalk in on them, it's oh, they're actually pretty dang smart.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to bring it up because that's something that I don't think people give enough value to, is just how smart these animals can be and how willing they will do whatever it takes to put themselves in that situation where they always have the upper hand. And it sounds funny because we make it seem like, man, you got to always be on top of your game. But there have also been multiple instances where I'm walking and I sound like a cow. And I look to my right, and there's a big buck absolutely clueless that I am even there. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes it just works out. Sometimes it doesn't matter what you do. You're just not going to win.
And you have to be okay with that to some extent, too.
Oh, yeah.
And that's hunting, right?
Knowing that you're doing the best that you can. as long as you are doing the best that you can.
Yeah.
When you realize afterwards that you got complacent,
Yeah.
it's, I guess, the necessary lessons of it.
Well, that's kind of what I mentioned earlier is like eliminating every variable you can. And that you're not going to win all the time, but you know for sure you're not going to lose over something that you could have controlled.
Exactly.
And that's what you're not going to kill a big buck every year. I've done it, 2 out of the last 4 or 5 years.
I'd say that's a pretty good ratio, though.
Yeah, but I mean, it could have been 4 out of the 5. You know what I mean? Where it's
we could always be better.
Yeah, and that's where you got to have that mindset too. Is like every time that you mess up, or let's say you do jump a big buck, go down to his bed and look at his track. Identify. Okay, this is what a big buck track looks like. He was bedded here. It was on this ridge. The wind was doing. Get out a notebook or pull out your phone and write down the notes. Or if you see a big buck feeding on something, take a picture of that.
I want to give a plug to Tacticam because this is something you brought up. So on Tacticam, when they take photos, like Nate is actually way more fond of the Tacticam app than I do, or I am. And when Nate put in all these little details of like wind direction and even like temperature and humidity, when it was a certain amount, that was the only time Nate got pictures of bucks. A specific wind direction, specific humidity, specific pressure.
Yeah, you can filter your camera, your photos on the Tacticam app with wind direction and moon phase, time of the day, obviously, all these things. And I have a couple factors like wind direction that I will have out of 100 buck photos, I'll have like 96 or 97 of the buck photos at that camera are with a certain wind direction.
Yeah.
Or if in the summertime coming through at night, they're coming through and it's like Northeast Washington, we have usually really clear summers. So usually it's not like you're not dealing with like cloudy full moon night where it's a full moon, but it's not actually bright out. Normally when it's a full moon, it's bright. Like same thing. Same with the moon phase, nighttime photos, almost all of the photos. So it is something interesting to see that it's not just hubbubaloo that these deer are just kind of randomly out there moving. Like everything they do, there's a reason behind it.
Yeah. Well, we're going to wrap it up on this one with Brock. This is our first episode with Brock. And if there's anything I know about you folks listening at home is you guys, like me, know that Mule Deer is king. Our most viewed podcast is the podcast with Austin Harris, which Austin Harris will be here very shortly. You guys will have more podcasts from him as well. But this is Brock's podcast. And as Brock was mentioning, he's got a lot more to share. This won't be the last time you guys see Brock on this channel, but because this podcast is already so full of stuff, we're going to wrap it up on this episode for the first episode of Mule Deer March, which I am so stoked. I think it went absolutely beautifully.
Yeah, and I will say this with absolutely no shade to any of the other guests we've had on this podcast, that for sitting here with our recording time, I don't know what the edited time of this podcast is. We're at about 2 hours and 15 minutes right now. This is the most engaged I have been talking about hunting.
Maybe it's
since we started this.
Maybe because it's you that invited the guest, and so you just had a direct correlation. Like that's a guest that I want to have on the show.
But it's also just this, and this is more for the Northeast Washington people. It's something about sitting here and like talking to you and then looking over and seeing these deer and knowing that like
these are in our backyard
within reasonable distance. I know where these deer live. Like if you live in Northeast Washington, you know that basically where you're able to hunt has animals like that, and like listening to the factors of how you approach it. It's something honestly like I aspire to be like that patient and that detail oriented hunter, and it's something I always work on. But like it's so
awesome.
It's so cool.
That's exactly why we have this podcast series going, because folks, if we haven't mentioned it for whatever reason, every single guest that we have on Mule Deer March is a Washingtonian.
That's right.
And I specifically targeted Washingtonians because we're trying to get Washington some exposure and just kind of tell the people out there that, we might not get the recognition like Montana or Utah does, but there are some big bucks lurking around.
Absolutely.
No, there's not. We don't need any recognition for Washington.
But with that said, though, they don't come easy. Don't expect to just walk here and just be like, oh, yeah, there's a 190 inch. Because trust me, I've been hunting here my whole life, 25 years of hunting out in the woods, and I have yet to really even lay eyes on something like this. So just because we got a man over here who's consistently doing it, don't think that you're going to be able to replicate the same success. Is it possible? Absolutely. Is it realistic?
I think the difference,
difference.
one of the things I think about too sometimes, just as a side note, is like, are these deer that you could set up a guiding service around? Like taking people out, like in Montana and Wyoming and Utah and places, you have people that can consistently take out, and it's a deer density thing, right? And it's a habitat thing with ability, and these are individual accomplishments.
These are, to me, like I get asked about guiding a lot. Listening to what Brock told me about the amount of effort that he puts in after these deer, and not only how much effort he puts into scouting, but how he hunts the deer, I don't think that this would be a sustainable guiding business, because a lot of clients are going to see this picture and be like, oh yeah, I want to shoot a buck like that. But then for them to be able to do the hunt how he does it to kill the deer, I don't think they're going to do it. How many clients are going to be walking behind their guide one step every 5 minutes? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Or even like if I wanted to guide, there's a couple hillsides that I know that, okay, most days that there's a buck going to be walking across this hillside. I mean, if you want to go for a big buck, you're not going to be on the same hillside a lot of the time. And you got to be okay with, I mean, like I said, like, I don't think they're super patternable to where they're going to be on the same ridge every single day. What I think of like a pattern, it's very loose, is like when he's on this ridge, he uses it this way. Mm-hmm. So where I know my hyper-focused glass is like, okay, I'm watching this trail because when they come on this ridge, they're using this trail. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I don't think you could guide like that, because no one's okay with sitting there for 7 days when you're paying thousands of dollars to not see a single deer.
To put it bluntly, like to be able to guide, there has to be a certain level of difficulty that you don't exceed. Let's just put it that way, because most clients aren't willing to, put in that type of effort.
I do not think I'm a better hunter than anyone. This is why I hunt mule deer, is because I think that the direct success from your time being put in is the highest. Maybe whitetail might be better with scrapes, but I think that if you want to replicate this kind of success, you have to replicate my mindset, and there's no way around that. Anyone can luck into a buck, like you said. You can be tumbling through the woods and come across a 200 and shoot it, but if you want to do it more than once, you have to start thinking about it differently.
Exactly.
And that's not like me toot my own horn. It's just saying I've learned this from other people and some of it on my own, but you just have to want it more. And that's what I flat out, I kind of want it more than a lot of people, and I think that's what leads to the success.
Because most people aren't going to walk through the deadfall that you were explaining.
Yeah.
It sounds like an absolute nightmare.
On all the other things, the 2 a.m. mornings and the deadfall. And
I know. Even
back
then.
And the okay with not seeing deer and all these things.
Yeah.
Let's move on to fast facts.
Let's go to fast facts. This was a really long podcast, but folks, we hope it was very enjoyable. This is like a very engaging podcast. I enjoyed it very much. Nate, do you got a fast fact for us?
I do.
All right, let's hear it.
This is off the game of estimations, but the average bull elk, mature bull elk, produces about 200 pounds of boneless meat. Now, about 200 is anywhere from like 180 to 250, depending on the bull elk. At just over 100 grams of protein per pound of meat, this means that the average bull elk has just over 20,500 grams of protein. Okay. To make this a little more interesting, according to Harvard research in 2025, the average American eats about 82 grams of protein a day. Now, the recommended optimal dose of protein or amount of protein is 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. So the average American does not eat as much protein as they should. However, taking that said, this means that a single bull could feed the average American's protein intake for 250 consecutive days.
So not even a full year.
Not even a full year. But the interesting part of this, I think even more so, is the people that are into elk hunting tend to be more into being cognizant of how they live and their health and things like that. Mm-hmm. And typically their protein intake is quite a bit higher. So let's say double, 150, 160 grams of protein a day. And the amount of times I've heard people get chastised for why are you shooting 2 elk a year? How could you possibly eat that much meat? It is not outlandish.
No.
For one person to go through a couple elk in a year.
People were calling us crazy that we needed 3 spiked bulls, and I'm like, dude, did you see how much meat I got off of my bull? I got literally a Walmart-sized bag of meat from my bull. It doesn't last very long.
Anyways, thought that was interesting.
That is very interesting. Well, at the very beginning, I had a trivia duel regarding spider silk. So my fast fact is a continuation of that. So in the 19th and early 20th centuries, did you know that spider silk was actually used in telescopes and riflescopes?
No.
They were used for the reticle. So if you don't know, like rifle scopes, they have a crosshair, and they have, like that's your vertical line, your horizontal line. Spider silk was one of the most common pieces of a rifle scope because they used the silk to do the crosshair reticle.
No way.
Yep. So obviously, in today's market, being that we have so much more technology, traditional spider silk is now being phased out, and we have like modern technology that can kind of replicate the same traits that spider silk has. But spider silk directly had a revolutionary play into how our scopes got to where they are today.
Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah, spider silk. So
I wonder
it
how
sounds
they-
gross, but they had spider farms. Like they just had spiders everywhere. Like, I mean, that's like a nightmare to me, but it must have been a very profitable business. So you can't knock on it too much. Before we go, Brock, do you have any plugs? Where can people find you? If people want to ask you questions, where can they ask you questions? You're going to get bombarded.
If you want people asking you questions.
No, like I said, I can talk mule deer all day, every day. I love mule deer.
The number one request I got from Austin Harris was people kept asking me for a way to contact Austin Harris.
Yeah.
Because Austin doesn't do social.
I did. I mean, me and Austin, we talked time. Actually, I just called him last weekend, actually. But,
That's cool.
Austin's a great guy. He's
awesome.
Really good hunter. So when he comes on, I would back pretty much anything he says blindly.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I've got Instagram. If I don't respond, it's not because I'm trying to avoid you. I'd probably just delete it for a little bit, and when I re-download it, I'll respond.
What's your Instagram handle?
It's brock.weilep, so that's BROCK .WEILEP.
A link will be in the description if you guys are interested in reaching out.
Well, Brock, thank you so much for imparting your information on us and your knowledge with Washington mule deer. Samong and I appreciate it just as much as everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, like you said, it's just something where you just never stop learning. Nobody's perfect at it. So everybody has something to learn, and there's a lot to learn from this podcast. With that said, this was a awesome first installment of the first week of Mule Deer March. We will see you again with a new guest next Tuesday.
See you then.